Okay, so welcome everybody to our September 2nd Board of Education workshop. Hard to believe that summer is here and gone, but we're excited to be starting a new school year. So our first item on the agenda is public communication. Don't see any communication, so we'll get right on to Mr. Pagel's update on staffing.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to see everyone. And here we are in September. It's this time of year that we kind of do our summer summary, if you will, of our staffing work from the summer. And I think now I've said this for the last 3 years in a row. We really didn't expect it to be a super busy hiring summer, and we're all of a sudden 45 teachers later. So it was busy with lots of people moving around, and we're really proud of our class for this year, which we'll get into in a second. If you were a board member last year, you saw me come and do a kind of a process presentation of how employee services functions during the hiring process. And then I did this again at our orientation. We talked a little bit about this in terms of the flow chart that you see here. And I display this again just as a reminder that it is a comprehensive process that involves lots of steps for folks to go through, and it involves lots of eyes of our different staff members on the process. And I think it's really important to do it that way because it creates a systemic approach to hiring, because we're not just hiring for one school, we're hiring for one Troy, and we know with people moving around and so forth. So it's important not to have a silent approach, but to have a systemic approach. And so this flow chart is it kind of shows that we are dedicated to that, and lots of different steps, all the way from that first screener interview all the way to a final interview with the superintendent. So our folks who have been hired have sort of been through the gauntlet and have been vetted to ensure that we've got the best folks with us here for our kiddos. The next slide is kind of our it's our flyer for our elementary job fair, something that we're really proud of. We put this in place several years ago to attract a large candidate pool that we could vet through each year. And this year, I'm proud to say that even despite the teacher environment shortage that we're in, we still had 400 applicants to this process. And so we got our eyes on a lot of really, really great candidates. Now that's down from 750, but that is still pretty robust considering, where we are. And on the next slide, you'll see that these folks go through several rounds of interviews and screeners and online evaluation tools that we use to vet our candidates. And what comes out of this, and we do this despite, whether we have lots of openings or just a few openings. And the reason for that is every year it seems like something pops in August that we need to hire from, but we also use it as a way to fill our long-term subbing positions, our building sub positions, and so forth. So this has proven to be a super useful tool for us in the past. However, as the summer moves forward, many of the candidates from that list do become exhausted, and so it's a good thing that we've seen so many and that we have folks ready to call up and move into for that next round of hiring. We hired some administrators this year, so you'll see that on the stat sheet as well. And I spoke to the board last year about a rubric that we use. That is, the one that you see here is related to the administrator evaluation tool that we use, but we also use information from our community survey. So we survey staff and community of especially when there's a building administrator that we are replacing. So we want to get input and on those folks. So this is the rubric that we used, and it's based on that criteria. There's 2 pages of that. Again, a lot of it based on the administration evaluation tool that we use, along with criteria that we've identified as being important. And now on to the class for this year. 45 new TSD teachers this year. So, and you can see the breakdown here, 3 at the preschool, 10 elementary, 17 secondary. We were heavy on secondary retirements this year as opposed to elementary. However, some of our elementary folks moved into those secondary positions, thus creating the domino effect that that has elementary openings happen. And then 15 special education teachers. So many thanks to the various interview teams and screening teams. There's a lot of human power capital that goes into all of this. And I'm happy to say, knock on whatever this is made out of, that we're fully staffed here. And that is an unusual thing. If you were to meet with many of my colleagues around the state, there are many open positions that are being filled by substitutes right now, particularly in the areas of special education and some of those specialized secondary positions as well. So I feel like we're in really great shape with that. 7 of these 45 were former TSD graduates. That's awesome to see them come back home. We've got 24 teachers with education experience beyond a bachelor's degree. So here's my sports analogy that I'm going to use. We try to have a combination of new recruits and the transfer portal. Okay, so we've got those exciting new folks right out of university, along with some experienced folks that we've got lucky enough to recruit and come to Troy. So a nice mix of those folks as well. Additionally, we have 6 new administrators here in the district. We also have 2 administrators that are in new roles. They've got different addresses that they report to, but they're still here in the district in different places. 3 of those folks were internal and 3 external. So again, a good nice mix of that as well. So at the board meeting, you're going to have in your packet all of their resumes and information so that you can see kind of where they all come from and so forth. And we'll have some nice slides with their pictures on it. And so we're still taking ID badges and things like that. So we'll have the pictures for you on the presentation and so forth. But I'm super humbled by the results that we've gotten and thankful to so many people, a lot of hours in on this to make sure that we were fully staffed, especially in another year that we really didn't think was going to be that busy. So I'm just super excited about that. So with that, I'll take your questions. Please.
Looking at the teacher hires, and it's okay if you don't have the number now. How many did we have, I guess net, where are we? So how many did we have retire and resign, compared to how many?
I can give you that exact number. I think our retirements were in the 20 range. Or maybe a little bit higher, and then we had some resignations, folks to move on to different places. And one of the things that we're doing is we are conducting exit interviews with folks to see the why. The overwhelming why right now is still proximity, and we're in an environment now where other districts are paying for experience, and so in the past you kind of became locked in to the district you were working in. If once you were there for a few years. It would have been tough to take a step backwards and pay to go somewhere else. Now it's a different market. And so people are saying, gosh, I could capture 2 hours of my life back and not having this commute that I have every day. And so, but what we're seeing both sides of that. So we lose a few people to that, but then we gain some people that live close to us too.
What I'm looking at is, where are we on FT hours? Are we, because 45 to me seems like a lot.
Yeah.
Compared to the number
That's a great point. So
that I recall
yeah.
hearing about retirement. So that's why I'm trying to figure out, do we have more teachers now than we did?
No, we are going to have a reduction in total FTE.
Yeah.
And I want to say we're in that 15 to 20 minus 15 to 20 from
Okay.
last year. So I'll get that exact information for you. But we were able throughout all this process to right size the district based on our enrollment and so forth. So we have been able to make some reductions in that area, and we'll be able to share with you that savings.
Thanks. We're with your reductions, I know we had talked about, like initially in the spring, we talked about just retirements. Were you able to capitalize further on that, something like that?
We were able to do some internal movement where we've got folks that were in other roles that are now more in teaching FTE or hybrid FTE. And so you're able to capture back some FTE in that regard as well.
Questions, you mentioned other districts paying for experience.
Are we? Yes. Yeah.
All across the board?
We are in the market. I would say across the board, but more more at the special education and specialty areas, and where the candidate pool is much lower. We haven't had as much of a need to do it at the elementary because we're still getting 400 applications for it. Yeah, but not to say that we wouldn't for the right candidate. But yes, we are trying to be competitive with everybody else because the market has changed.
I'm reading a lot and, local stuff about folks hiring or having secondary, particularly teachers teaching outside their certification areas, being emergency certed across. Is that something we're dealing with much or?
We've had to do it on a limited basis in the past. We are not doing it very much right now, thankfully. We've been able to align most people into places. We have a couple of folks in Grow Your Own programs, which is a certification pathway in special ed. So we've got a few of those that are working with us right now and approved, but we have not had to pull a lot of specialized programs for this year.
Fantastic. And one last question, sorry. Is there a particular tool you're using for the exit interviews? I've heard of some, like we learned about some at our conference.
So I've seen a few of these tools presented, and we've kind of made our own version of it. So we're still kind of on the new, that's kind of a new thing for us. But we've combined a few of those tools to ask questions, and a lot of folks just kind of open up to us too. So I try to leave it open-ended so that they can really share with us and be frank with us about the reasons why, and then tell us a little bit about your experience that we had in Troy. What did we do well? What do you think we need to improve? So that kind of stuff.
Thanks. I have a couple of questions. First was the TSP grads, 7 of them. Is that an average for us from previous years? Is that an increase? Or
It's a little higher this year.
Okay.
For whatever reason that this was the year. It was a little bit higher, but we always have a few.
a follow-up? Do we give any preference to them?
At the end of the day, it's the best candidate, in all aspects. And so what's really cool to me is that 7 of those people that were students here were the best candidate.
Okay, and these are not any of those students that we could, I remember we could use some funding that is provided by the state to, to help our own students become teachers.
Yes.
Are any of those from that program?
I don't think they're there yet. I think we're getting close to where that we will start to see that now.
Okay, is that called Grow Your Own? What is the name of the program?
I'm trying to remember. There's one that's Teachers for Tomorrow.
Yeah.
That might have been that one. But I do know what you're. I do
There's
know
a
what you're talking about.
state-funded
And
program.
there are several of them now that are kind of running concurrently.
Okay,
And we're trying to tap into all of those.
okay.
The Grow Your Own is to take a staff member that's a
Mhm.
teacher, help them
Yeah.
to become teachers.
Or a staff member who is a teacher to add another certification, like special
Yes.
ed or
Yeah.
other high needs.
Yeah, so we've got several in there.
Now-
Together.
Yes, down together. Yep.
A while ago, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, I don't remember, we wanted to, it's always important to have our staff kind of look like our student body or represent similarly as far as the diversity goes or any kind of thing.
Yeah.
And do we make any attempt to get to that point, and where are we within?
I can tell you this year's class was 14% diversity rate, which is well above the average, and proud of that.
Okay.
Really proud of that. So I think that's there, and yet still best candidates, and so we're
Okay.
trying to cast as wide a net as possible in order to have both.
Do we see a lot more candidates of diverse backgrounds, with either be it race or religion or whatever?
Yeah, I think I think it's been kind of up and down, and so folks, the trends that we've seen are folks tend to apply for positions within a fairly close proximity of where they grew up, and so that can limit you, to where your net can be cast. We try to do a lot of out of state, kinds of recruiting things, and spend a lot of time and effort in those with not a lot of results. But I'm proud that we're at 14% for this year. I think we were at 12 or 13 last year, so we've got a good thing going.
Thank you.
That's for John.
All right. Well,
Thanks, John. We're off and running.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
everybody.
So you'll see a formal resolution
along with presentation at the next meeting to
Okay.
formally bring those folks on board next year. See if that's where it's starting. Thank
Hey,
you.
Dan, you're up next.
Alright. So start with the admin building.
So just by as Dan's getting ready to we had been building up this particular award recommendation. As a reminder, I put it in the I wanted to put it in the communicate too, because we're so folks. We started talking at the end, kind of middle to the end of the 2012 bond that we were going to renovate this building. And we just kept putting it off, putting it off, putting it off. There were some dollars left at the end of that we intended to utilize for this particular building. So we started this process with a more kind of grandiose idea of what this building might look like. And the numbers we were getting back just didn't warrant it. Just didn't make sense. So we pared it back to the recommendation that you'll see, which is a very modest, just renovation of this building, infrastructure renovation, floors, new furniture, things like that. We're not moving any walls. We'll be adding a couple of conference spaces for the enrollment department, but we're going to be using a lot of furniture, walls, and things like that for some of those places. So we did what you're seeing in front of you is about half of where we were when we started this conversation, and that was just not reasonable for us to bring back a recommendation that amount. So what you're seeing here is enough that will make this building functional. And as part of the information I shared as well, we did look at the possibility of moving this entire operation to services. But there just wasn't enough space to do that without having to add on. And now we're talking about more, we're talking about footprint, expansion, and so forth. And we really do need the space. We need a conference space. We need meeting spaces. So for us to move this operation over to services, we would be gobbling up all of that space. So that's why we landed back on this recommendation for again a fairly modest renovation of this building.
Yeah, the initial 2019 bond had dollars allocated, just under $1 million for this building. So we're going to finish up that bond. That's all that remains. There's pre-pandemic, and then the pandemic hit. Kind of had to put the pause button on this project. So we're circling back. It's a smaller project, so it's something I can handle directly with the staff up here and TMP. So we'll finish up that bond, use those dollars, and then we'll supplement it with just under $1 million of the new bond. Finance this project, but just for your reference, so this is the building we're in right now. Obviously, we're in the boardroom here, but none of the layout back here is changing. All of that will remain. Obviously, new furniture for staff. We're getting more flexible seating, stand-up desks, things like that. We have a lot of staff that are at computers all day, so they prefer to stand at times. And then just updated conference room furniture. But with centralized enrollment now, right now we have kind of the big area up front here. It's not a ton of space for families, so this is, as Dr. Franceschi said, we'll add a conference room up here, a dedicated mail room for the mail to keep all the shipments that we get. Quite often in the summer, we'll get shipments from the buildings that are sent up here too. So we wanted a place that had a lockable area to where those deliveries can all just be pushed back into that room. And then tweaking up the bathrooms. So these are all going to be updated, ADA compliant bathrooms. So rather than a men and a women bathroom, we'll actually have over here 3 unisex bathrooms, which would be accessible by the public. So if they're coming in to enroll, they're going to have dedicated bathrooms now that they can use if they needed to. And then back here, nothing in the kitchen's being adjusted, but these 2 bathrooms will also be renovated. That'll be your male and female bathrooms over there as well. And then secured entry points as well for all the doors that lead back to the offices. So just as we're doing in all of our school buildings, we're looking to add a little additional layer of security. We get a lot of people coming up here for different things, so we want to make sure that we have adequate security access as well. And then right now, the way the setup is we have some employee services staff up front that are kind of handling the flow of traffic coming in and out. So we're gonna flip it so that way we have our enrollment and pupil accounting team up front, and then employee services back with their department. So again, this is really the only constructive part of the project right here. And it's really not, it's just adding those furniture walls right there. So it'll be a very minimal project, but the HVAC you hear running right now, things like that are gonna be replaced. They're gonna size it appropriately that you don't have to hear that going on during these meetings. So all the units, the windows, it's really just more functional updates than anything. So I think the last renovation here was in the 90s, and then prior to that was in the 70s. So
It's a very minor renovation up here with lights in 2008. That's when they did this Operation Baker, or what is currently IA.
Yeah.
The moved central office to IA for a semester while this area was being very lightly renovated.
So you can see here, this is your breakdown. So the bulk of any renovation is mechanical. So that's all your HVAC updates that we need for the building. We'll size things appropriately. There was things that were modified a few decades ago where we have certain offices that used to be part of a conference room. So you have HVAC units that are too strong for that area and it blows too much cold air, and then you have other parts of the building that get too warm. So it's just about balancing it out now that we have kind of that final design. But again, it's just your floors, your windows. They'll freshen up the paint, and then obviously the front part of the building here, just make it a little more accommodating and welcoming. We plan to have in that conference room as well some laptops set up. That way, if families need to come in and scan things in or register, they can do it all right there, and they don't have to come. Currently, they have to go in the back with our staff right now, and we have a few computers set up back there. So again, just trying to streamline the flow of this building. So total came in, we were budgeting around 1.8 million, came in just under 1.6. So for us, that difference will essentially pay for the furniture for this building. So it's kind of a win in that regard. And then obviously with contingency and savings there, then we'll just be pushed back into other projects across the district. So
And how much did you say is from the old bond?
about 950,000, I think so. You'll see that on the financial statements. We'll make a couple months here. It'll show the final cash amount of just under $1 million.
Anybody have- I have a handful of questions. How old is this building?
Goes back to the
And
50s or 60s.
it goes into the, it has to,
I think
I think based on the architects, it has to go into the 60s.
60s.
I would imagine it's in the 60s, yeah.
Okay.
it was a city building, wasn't it? And then we bought it.
Um,
I think I heard
Nobody
that.
is old enough to know that.
Yeah.
So old enough. Okay. And the capacity of this building, how many?
We have about just under 30 right now, but then you have frequent meetings here. So any given time, you might have 40 or so people up here. Yeah. So, and we did do the study. We had the architects look at the other building. They plotted on the building map to figure out could you fit from a square footage perspective without knocking walls down, and
Okay.
with that, it was too little. We obviously recognize anytime you do an administrative project, there comes a little scrutiny with it. So we wanted to make sure we did our due diligence over there to make sure, could we just move over there and just get the furniture? But that was a little challenging for the size.
And did you look into adding on there better than?
You could, but number one, you need the space. There's not a ton of space behind there with the woods behind you. We don't own that land.
It's all wetland around.
Yep. And then on the other side is parking and a warehouse, which is utilized by our technology department. So the amount we could add, I think it still would have been very tight over there. So,
I imagine it would probably be above.
Yeah, I was going to ask, would it be like 10 million kind of thing,
Yeah.
possibly? Okay. Just wondering. That's not.
What's the timing?
So we will move out of here and we will temporarily go over to services. We'll utilize some of the labs in the back. We kind of have a plan initially of where staff are gonna go. So it's about a 5 to 6 month project. So we'll move out November 1. We'll be over there, but fortunately with Christmas break, Thanksgiving break, midwinter break, and spring break, there's ample time that we're not in the building. Obviously we work year round, but the staff over there will be out. And then we'll plan to move in over spring break. Is the tentative goal. So
And the things that were renovated, like the carpets and the new furniture here, are they going to be reused or?
we'll reuse some of the furniture, like this boardroom isn't getting any updates. So all the
So this
furniture.
boardroom will
Yep.
stay the same?
Yep, this will stay the same. But,
Lighting in here is all new.
yeah,
Yeah, that's why this has been done. That's what I was wondering.
so we're kind of taking inventory of all the furniture that we have that's existing. A lot of it will move over to services and utilize it while we're there, and then figure out if we need to move it back or we can repurpose it in some other buildings. There's a lot of furniture that's just 30 years old too that like we need to recycle. So
Will we stay here during the renovation or will we be there?
we would, I guess we would probably have to be over there. It'll get pretty loud here with construction, but there may be staging area for materials in here too.
And then just for my clarification, then once we spend the money, we close out the
2019.
2019.
And when we spend that money, how long do we anticipate this building to last us? Usually, generally.
I mean, most of the items that are in here, like the HVACs, you can expect 20, 25 years out of those. The flooring could be 30 years. There's a ton of traffic here, so a lot of the flooring back in the back area is all original, so you can expect at least 20 to 30 years out of it.
Okay, anything else on this? Right? Stop it.
It's a good one.
I had to ask him.
Interesting.
So this is one of those not very like fun projects, but necessary. So we have 4 schools, sister schools, they're all the same design. So Barnard, Bemis, Hamilton, and Wass. So at the front entrance going into the main office, the soffit underneath the main entrance is just cracking and peeling. We've had pieces fall off. So we've gone through some design work with TMP. So basically they're gonna come in and replace all of the soffits at the main entrance of each building. So I think visually, that's where everyone goes in. That's what you see when you first walk in the building. So fortunately, it's something that we have funding for through our building sinking fund. So again, we took the low bidder on this one. So these are your low qualified bidders. So for all 4 schools, you can see they're just over $370,000. But that's what the sinking fund's for, to take on those projects that maybe most people wouldn't even think of, but it is part of our operation. So nothing unusual with this process. We had a few pre-bidders, so this should take place, it's said here, next summer is our goal. So this one, the operable walls are later on. This one, as soon as the work's in, they'll likely do evening and weekend work for this project. So as soon as the materials are in, so sometime in the fall, they'll start this.
So are they changing materials? So
Yeah.
doing something to make it more durable
Yep, it's gonna be a metal panel now.
versus the like.
Yeah. Or I don't even know where they call it. Starts with an E.
So when TMP did our building evaluation for 2023 projects and determine what needs to be replaced and updated, were soffits not part of that?
They are, but a smaller project like this, sometimes it's like on the plan for our sinking fund. So those are just known areas that maybe a custodian might know there's something going on. And then they communicate to our operations team, and then they kind of have a running list of projects that the sinking fund will take on. And then occasionally, depending on the size of the project, like a paving project, you could push over to the bond to pay for that, just to free up the sinking.
So this is a strategic move to the sinking fund.
Yeah.
To use the funds.
The sinking fund is meant for like regular maintenance and.
Yeah.
More structural,
Right, as
so,
opposed to.
yeah, if there's a structural project that, something like this, we only get $5 million a year relative to the sinking fund compared to a bond fund where you get a few hundred million. So whatever we can push into sinking fund that is more structural in nature, that's allowable. It just frees up then the bond fund, which there's a little more flexibility there to purchase equipment and furniture. And so to the extent that we can push something in sinking fund, we will.
But this would be considered.
I'm sorry.
This is considered.
Yeah,
So it's.
it's just an easy, small project
Yeah,
for the
it's a
sinking fund.
legitimate, it's a very legitimate use.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
what the sinking fund is for.
No, I was just wondering if it was identified during the process of TMP reviewing our buildings and things like that.
It was, I believe it was, because TMP was involved with this. Not every sinking fund project TMP gets involved with. It
Okay.
just depends on the nature of the project.
So will we have to do this with some of the other buildings as well? Future.
So these 4 buildings are all built the same, much like Larson and Bowling Park are, so, we don't have any other safety concerns at the other buildings as of right now.
We redid our front entrances at Larson and Bowling Park anyway,
Mhm.
a few years ago,
Yep.
3 years ago.
Mhm.
So that's all brand new.
And so,
Well, yeah.
I know about it. So these 4, we didn't redo them.
we didn't do the actual, we didn't do any structural overhangs or anything like that, like we did at Miles, for instance,
Mhm.
where we added at Morse. Those are buildings where we added to the entryway.
The front.
Yeah.
And those are standalone design
Entryway.
buildings, so.
Yeah. We did not touch.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, good to go on soffits?
And then last one is the operable walls. So this project is just 2 buildings right now. We have a couple others that are nearing end of life that we've got on our radar to look at next year. But this is for Hamilton and Wass. So these are full replacements. They're the original operable walls that we're looking to just do a full replacement for. So for instance, right now, the issue with these 2 are the tracks. So like you cannot physically even manually move the operable walls right now. So right now they're just set in a closed position, which at times can create a little bit of issue for the buildings. You know, I know Hamilton has a Christmas concert that they look to do every year, holiday sing along. So right now with it being closed, they're worried that they're not going to be able to open it up and have the gym available and all of that. So I know Rob, our operations director, is working with them to create a plan where if this is board approved, then they could have the contractors come in and perhaps demo it out over Thanksgiving, get it out of there, leave it open for a couple of weeks before the holiday break. But then that would at least open it up for them. But they're targeting the holiday break to be able to install the new one. So they need about 4 or 5 days, and they don't obviously want to interrupt the school day. So we did have 2 bidders on this project. So if you actually look at the bid tab, so we're taking on the base bid, we're taking the higher bid, but it's because of the alternates that we have. So when you add an alternate 1 and alternate 2, the second Northville contractor there, they actually subcontract out alternate 1 and 2. It's not something they perform, so they have a higher cost with those alternates. So when you add up base bid and then the alternates, we are going with the first bidder there because the total cost would be the lowest bid then at that point. So that's something that Lee Coley, our owners rep, they kind of put this RFP together for us. So they do a lot of our sinking fund work. And then this project would be part of that sinking fund as well. So the goal is hopefully over the Christmas break, we'll have them installed and ready to go. But we'll work with the principals before that to figure out if there's a good time to perhaps take them out ahead of time, open it up for them, and then be able to install the new ones at a later date.
What's the like, age, the current ones, like older, right?
They're like 25-ish years old.
Standard, how long do they last?
That's about right.
Okay.
Motor issues is generally what you see.
They're motorized?
Yep. So this one's more of a track issue right now. That's really preventing them from being able to close it or open it up.
So is it the track that's being replaced or is it the
Everything.
wall?
Yeah, the wall, track, and motor, everything's gonna get.
Whatever version or whatever I saw in the package seemed like the tracks were being replaced, not the walls.
Yeah, that was for some of the alternates.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, those were identified under alternate bids.
because we know we need the track, so they kind of broke it out.
Okay.
And then that's where that second bidder can't do the track work, they can only do the wall and the motor, so they subcontract it out. And in this case, it's a pretty sizable cost increase to do that.
Like, wall are we talking about? Just because it seems like a lot of money for
The whole length of the gym, yeah, so it's the divider between the cafeterias and the gym.
Yeah.
It's pretty close.
Yeah.
Pretty big.
Yeah, they're.
Does it just cover the, like the stage area? I'm trying
So
to envision it.
Yeah, so the gym and then the cafeteria are all adjacent to each other. The wall separates the length of the gym, so it's the long length of the gym. And then it goes floor to ceiling in the whole cafeteria and gym, so it's a 25-foot wall. And height,
That's substantial.
yeah, and motorized,
Yeah.
tracks, all of that.
Is it some kind of a canvas fabric kind of material?
Yeah, it's a hard material that can withstand the traffic and any damage from balls or anything like that, so, but it does have like a fabric coating over it.
Sunproof.
Yep, it helps with the sound with the cafeteria and gym class.
We good with this? All right. Thank you, Dana.
Dan? Oh, you want to, we're gonna do a bond update in just a few minutes. You want to just mention where we are with Smith?
Do you want to rearrange this again and do the bond update? So we,
Christine, you want to come up and do that now? Might as well. Yeah, that way we're titled book fit. But we are, the Smith project is moving along. The gym, but we had that issue with the gym, where we lost the wooden floor. And we made the choice to do the synthetic, in order to install the synthetic, they had to pour pour cement or bring the surfaces up, or the surface up. And that project is moving along. So we are on schedule for that project to be completed, so that we can get kids back in the gym as quickly as possible.
Now, our insurance didn't cover that because they would only do one-to-one replacement. We didn't have time to do that, right?
Right.
Is there any way they would cover partially at least?
They're covering the portion that would have cost, they're covering that piece that would have cost to replace a wooden floor. So we're paying the delta between the cost of the wooden floor and the synthetic floor, which ends up being really the cost for the cement to bring the floor up. That was the difference.
And they paid for the water
Donation.
as well,
Okay.
and all the demo.
Yeah.
So trying to pay for
It would have taken us a good couple of months to get that wooden floor in. Right now, unfortunately, there's just nowhere for the kids to be outside right now. So we wanted to get them back into the gym as quickly as possible.
And the same thing covers the balance essentially.
That project is on schedule and moving along.
So we thought it would be nice to provide our community with an update on where we are with the bond now that we're 2.5 years in. So I'm working closely with Kendra and her team who are actually creating a presentation that will look different than this one for the board meeting. But we did want to put together a few pieces just to be able to share with you. So in thinking about our bond, between December of 22, right after we passed the bond, through August of 25, just this past month, we've actually been able to touch all 21 of our instructional buildings and our 4 support buildings. And that's through work which includes our community resources. As you know, we invested deeply right out of the gate in spaces that we knew our community would be able to see and use. So that would be places like our playgrounds, our athletic fields, knowing that our community invested in us and we wanted to make sure that we could give to them right away. Some of these projects are bigger, it will take multiple years, but we knew that would allow us to welcome our community onto our fields. We had a network infrastructure across the entire organization that will allow us to continue to have high functioning Wi-Fi, which has become incredibly important, and even more so in our secondary buildings because all of our assessments are now done through Wi-Fi, so they're all digital. And we've had we've struggled in areas where we've had large numbers of kids. So in the gymnasium when we're testing for the SAT or the PSAT. So this update has now provided us with much higher frequency Wi-Fi. So that's wonderful. Obviously furniture and instructional design builds, and we'll go a little bit more into it. This is an older version of the series and how we're chunked up for the bond. So I think it's really important just to know we have just begun, right? So there's so much that we've accomplished in the last 2.5 years, but we are really just in that third column, that 2025. And we still have those series 2 and 3 ahead of us. So just to give perspective, there's been a great amount of work, but there's still more to come.
We've been focused really, our major projects over the last 2.5 years are represented here in this chart. So furniture, in all of our elementary schools, all 12 elementaries, as well as Baker, IA East, and Troy High. Parts of Troy High, not all of Troy High. Our elementary playgrounds are now complete as well. Smith Middle School Build and Design, we are halfway home. So one more year ahead of us with an anticipated opening in the fall of 2026 at Smith. Bolin Park and Larson, we've really been deep in the design process, and you've been invited as board members to come give feedback for that on either Tuesday or Thursday, the 9th or the 11th. So we hope that you're able to do that. Athens High School design has been a big piece of it. All of you had an opportunity to see where we were with that process. And then obviously our athletic fields, which you've all seen. So the next few slides are really just images to be able to talk and show you a little bit about what's going on around the district. So this is from elementary all the way through high school, just varying pieces of new furniture throughout the district. Interestingly, one of the pieces that we've also, what you see in this bottom center picture is actually a picture at Troy High. One of the things you might not notice if you weren't looking for it, there's some, oh, the whole picture goes away, but there's something really important that's missing from that picture. It'll go back just a minute, there it goes. So all of our high school kids, the students to class, they carry their backpacks, right? And so one of the things that we noticed is in our middle schools, and our elementary schools, but especially in our middle schools, they're not allowed to carry backpacks. And so the flexibility of that space and the usability of the space is dramatically different when there's not 30 backpacks on the ground. So in this space, which is one of our English classrooms, we are piloting hooks for all of our high school students. The hooks are on the instructional wall in the front. And we are starting with our classrooms that have new furniture, and we'll grow that through the building. And it's been very well received. And to be very honest, our 9th graders are used to not having backpacks. So for them, that's an easy learn. It's the older kids who are a little more obstinate.
We need them to just age out.
Right, that's right. Just aged right up. That's right. There's been a lot of conversations about playgrounds. Here's 2 of the ones that were completed last summer. We know that we are continuing to work very hard in partnership with our Barton Mallow team to ensure that we have incredible spaces for our youngest learners in all of our elementaries. Our athletic fields, you've had the opportunity to be at many of them. The top right is Troy High School, currently under construction, the athletic gateway. Right in the center there, probably important to point out, is a ticket booth. That's temporary right now as we build out those 2 new spaces. That ticket booth is what was brought to us in partnership on loan from our friends at Royal Oak. They had to use it when they were going through construction. But our owner's rep, Michelle Currens, who works for us to help oversee the bond and how we are spending our funds, she's connected very much to the work that we do. She knew that we were seeing a challenge here, and she reached out to Royal Oak because she also supports them, and kind of brokered that opportunity for us. So things like that are what keep our bond on track and keep our experience trending positive for our families. It's because we have this really incredibly strong team. I just think I can't say enough about the work that Michelle does, but also our facilities team and what Dan leads with them. It's just really allowed us to continue to progress. Smith Middle School. Underway. We are looking to set up a date with you this fall so that we can walk the board back through before it gets too cold. So you can see the progress that's taking place. It's really incredible there. Athens High School, here's some renderings of the full building as it's put together. With the addition being off the back there, that academic addition, that wing will start. We will plan to break ground this coming spring of 2026. And that'll be a 2-year build. So spring of 2026 until fall of 2028 opening for that. And then we will begin on the front side of the building in the summer of 2028. And the conversation that's yet to be had that we're inviting you to be a part of is the renovations for Bolin and Larson. So Bolin and Larson are sister schools, so the same layout. So our plan is to be able to follow the same plan twice over. Also continuing to iterate around learning communities for our middle school students, where we repurpose the blocks that are back there. Bolin and Larson's renovation is currently not planning to add any additional square footage on the outside of the building at this time. There is an option where we were talking about adding an additional classroom on the front of the building. That's really dependent upon enrollment. So at this time, as long as our enrollment trends where it is, we don't need to add an additional classroom. And that is the final slides. So we just thought it would be nice to be able to share some of those updates. I don't know if you have any outstanding questions or anything that you would like shown when we present to the board next week at the board table.
I have a question, and I've had a long conversation with a couple of parents who were unhappy, I guess I would say, with some of our playground stuff. And the thing that they complained about was the fact that the playgrounds that we got rid of were good and almost new, and we are putting about the same or almost similar playground, and we feel like it's a waste of taxpayer money. It may help with this to, one, explain what we replaced and what we replaced with, how old they are, and the reason for our spending that money. This one's come from 3 parents who were completely upset with it.
I think it would be important to recognize and just share, that each of those playgrounds was approximately $700,000. A good portion of that $700,000 went into site work. Replacing tracks in some cases, creating soft surface play areas where in many cases those didn't exist, and quite frankly, making the play areas more safe. So to your point, I think it's important. I think it'll be important for us to just acknowledge those things. And the other piece is, and I know it's frustrating for a couple of our buildings that are, the perception is that they're lagging behind, and at least in 2 cases they are. That's a reality that was unfortunate, and it'll be important for us to reiterate that we really challenged ourselves to do 6 and 6. And we talked about that, doing 6 at one time, we knew was a heavy lift. But the alternative was, do you do, 4, 4, and 4, and which 4 are 3 years later? And so in an effort to try to expedite this, we did the 6 and 6, knowing that some of this work was going to lag into the school year, but taking a few more weeks in the spring or in the fall may be better than waiting an entire another year. So,
Just from my,
reiterate, I think.
just from the short time I filled in for a little bit in the elementaries, it was out on the elementary playgrounds. I think sometimes it can be a little misleading too when you look at the equipment and like, oh, it looks great. But then I was like, oh,
Step
this
on it.
metal cable broke and now I've got to shut down this piece until this can get replaced. And like, I was surprised at how.
For a way, it looks like it's.
Yes, yes. So that was a little eye-opening for me. So I think sometimes.
Maybe creating a small FAQ explaining what we did, that's all,
Yeah.
just so that they understand
No, I think
where the
that's
money
really
went.
good. And I think it's also important to acknowledge that there's some frustration, and I completely get that. And we would want all of our projects to be done on time. I can tell you that the playground, especially at Hamilton, we are working collaboratively with Bark Mantle in an effort to, there have been significant back charges to that particular contractor, and we'll be looking at potentially recouping some of those funds as well that we could put back into other projects. And so there's a significant amount of work on the backside to make sure that contractors know that if they, for us, for you, promises made have to be promises kept. I mean, as a board, you're left with that responsibility. Same administratively, we want to live up to that. It's incumbent upon our contractors to know that if they're going to sign on for a job, that they're going to get the job done. And in many cases, this particular contractor, without going into too many details, wasn't paid for quite a while until we were certain a percentage of that job was done. So we'll continue to keep their feet to the fire with respect to that, and make sure that make sure that these projects are done on time. So I think it'll just be important for us to recognize, we acknowledge that there's frustration, but at the same time, we'll try to press these jobs as quickly as
I
possible.
mean, some of the feedback that we received and I did actually go and take a look at, was it Grosse Point, like their portal that showed, kind of the tracking of bond funds. So while I understand that people might be upset at a delayed project in one side, I always look at big picture. And when you look at what we've been able to accomplish in the last 2 years, anybody who's renovated their home will know that things never go according to plan. It is very rare for everything to be done on time, 100% to specification. So I have, not that we want delays anywhere. To me, that, overall seems like a normal part of the process, even when you're renovating 2,500 square foot house, let alone 21 buildings and all of that. What I think might be helpful is sometimes a elementary school parent is not going to the middle school and is not going to the high school. So they may not have even ever gone to Athens or Troy High and seen all the work that's actually been completed at these other locations. And I'm not saying this needs to be for the September meeting, but a more comprehensive list of, these are the projects, this has been started, this has been completed, this is on budget, above or below, a full list with pictures, right? All the before and after of the stadiums, of the work at Athens, of the work at Troy High, of the Smith Middle School, because I'm sure a lot of people do not even drive down Livernois where you can now see that work. So, people will focus on their neighborhood or their school, but not see the totality of the work
That's
that
it,
we've
the
actually
bigger
completed
picture.
in the.
And to that point, I mean, I appreciate you saying that. That's exactly what Kendra and the team is putting together. Because a lot of this information, much of what we've been doing to date has been a lot of design work. So we're not actually spending a tremendous amount of money yet. So some of those budgets haven't been fully, in some cases, fully developed. But there are, as we come to completion of the playgrounds, as we come to completion of furniture, athletics and so forth.
A significant amount of work has been
100%,
completed on time and on budget, and I think we need a list with pictures.
Yeah, so that's exactly what,
Yeah.
that's exactly what we're building out.
Yeah, okay.
And with more detailed budget information as it comes available. So,
One other thing that I think would be helpful is just to spend a minute or two on process, because there has been some thought that, the schools aren't well equipped to manage their own construction projects. We need a numbers rep. Well, we have a numbers rep. So maybe a brief tutorial in terms of what the owners rep does and how her relationship with us, with our architects, with Barton Allen, that would be, I think, less helpful for people just to understand that, we do have professionals that are, working in this area. We're not asking somebody who
Teaches middle school to do that.
to have to manage a construction project.
Yeah.
Well, I guess absence of information causes
Yeah.
people to make assumptions, so the more we can offer, the better. Color coded.
I already saw something on the website saying
Pictures,
bond
color
update, so I'm assuming that's where it's.
On time is green, on budget.
Sites. Ideas if you like. And then also create a fun series of videos. So that covers those smaller things like design, how many people are actually involved in the design process and how that experience.
Yeah.
So getting into the nitty gritty, some of those other types is short, short videos.
Yeah,
And someone might rightly ask, well, why doesn't your construction manager just do that for you? Why doesn't the department? Well, certainly have the capacity to get you that information. And they do in fact have the capacity to do that. The problem is running into K-12. Now, anything we put on our website has to be ADA accessible. And which means Melissa and their team have to build all that out because it has to be it has to be ADA accessible. And someone just providing you, oh, this is great, let's just grab that from here, or let's grab that from there, put it on your website, and without the back work being done on it, it's not accessible. And that's when we get into
So with,
compliance related issues.
with the videos, I do remember many parents and students and coaches complaining that you cannot play spring soccer because the ground is always muddy and all of that. You can't really see in a good video because the work is underground, right? So some way to highlight that, because now you can play the entire spring season and not cancel any games because the ground doesn't have 3 feet of dirt on it. Some kind of things like that, some way to highlight those. Except for we keep baseball. So that one.
Well, this is good. This is good feedback. We appreciate that because that will help us then
Yeah.
build out some additional information that we'll share on the 16th. Is it? 16th.
Yeah.
All right.
Great, thank you.
You want to go to the dashboard? You want to take anybody's break?
Good, good.
Oh, good.
Let's try one more.
All right.
See how long it goes.
David,
See how long it goes.
Yeah.
We'll just keep
I'm
going
pleased to,
until we get
Yeah,
pleased to have David join us.
his first time.
Yeah,
Presentation.
official workshop. David's done a tremendous job already helping to support the teaching and learning team. Much of the success we had on our opening day is in large part to the work that Natalie started and the team, but that David picked up very quickly and took control over and delivered, I think, an exceptional half week of learning, I guess. So back to our conversation last spring. We talked about a data dashboard, and we talked about how we could be a little more front facing with some information. So we took the feedback that you provided us, and David and has been working with our team here in both teaching and learning, TRC, our technology, as well as Kendra and so forth, and many others to build out what our data dashboard will look like. Now, what we're sharing with you today is a draft. It's really what I'd like you to focus on is what are the areas that we're identifying data. This is by no way a finished product. We need to make it look pretty still. We need to actually put it in a format that the community will respond positively to, not keep away from, show the data in a format that is going to be, easily understood and so forth. And that is not what this looks like yet. Okay, so just a warning. We really just want your feedback on, did we hit all the areas that you had identified? If not, what are we missing? Okay, so David, turn it over to you.
All right, so the first section that we hope to highlight are the standardized assessments that we provide yearly. So when we have the time to get the most current data, we think by the end of September. First, you will see AP courses enrollment by year. One line we're going to add to this chart, we assume, is also a line that indicates our general enrollment so that you can see how those two lines relate to each other. I suspect it will show that you can see the gap widening and better rates of AP course enrollment by children. We will also have a chart on here that shows the percentage of students who earned a 3 and above in their AP course, since it's largely accepted as the metric for college equivalency, of course.
David, will you
Yeah.
show who, because do all of our students take the test or some opt out of not taking?
That's a good question. Some do opt out of not taking the tests. So I think, I'm trying to think of what data we would have here. I think we have access to the number of kids who take the test, and then of those kids, the percentage that get.
Yeah,
So we probably show the percentage who take the exam and get a 3.
yeah.
Could you use your enrollment data to tell you your total?
Say that again.
Count your seats on your AP English classes, let's say. I've gotten 400 kids taking AP English, 350 from the AP website say they took the test, then you can see how many didn't.
Sure. Yeah.
Is this the number of AP classes being taken or the number of students?
That's a good question also. This right here is the number of students.
Can you make sure that that's obvious?
Yeah,
Because it wasn't to be,
yes,
Yes.
and yes, we can. And you'll find too that almost all of the charts are not obvious yet. It's a very, very well, for sure.
Our goal is to have this in a format by the 16th in order to share, still in draft form.
Okay.
And have it ready by the end of the month to go public. That's the goal, is to have it by the end of the month.
so I won't comment like graph by graph,
Sure.
but, if I'm sitting here and trying to figure out whether it's the number of students who are taking an AP class or the number of AP classes being taken by all of the high school students, somebody else might not know what you're looking at.
Absolutely.
I think so just in general, that's good feedback.
Yeah.
I think that's.
And all that up.
Yeah.
All right. We do not have a graph yet for this, but our next intention under the MSEP PSAT,
So all the data is for all our Troy schools?
yes, it is
So fully aggregated, not by building,
fully aggregated,
no subgroup data though.
not at this time.
Okay.
So the MSEP PSAT and SAT data will also be showing grade levels, and we'll be showing grade levels since the spring of 22. Since you remember, we did not test in the spring of 20. Spring of 21 was optional. And I know that, speaking of Hamilton, the kids that opted to come in or not, it was not like a true subset of my students. The spring of 22 on, we've tested everybody again. So we intend to show for MSEP, PSAT, and SAT our core subject areas of literacy and math, and for you to be able to see the trends since 22 on grade level aggregates.
I have one thing to add here. Historically, we don't see IA data in PSAT or SAT. And I absolutely think we should have it because it's part of our school.
We don't have access to it.
Why can't we get it?
Because they're coded, because they're an aggregate that's coded back to the field, but stuff that is separated out. And they're not coded back to they're coded back to their schools, but they're not coded as a cohort outside of the one aggregate cohort for the IA.
We'd have
There's
to,
not an
we'd have to do it ourselves.
True, right?
Yeah, why can't we do it ourselves? So this is something that IA folks always complain, is that we don't treat them as one of our schools.
So what story would it tell?
You would tell us how they're doing, that's all. Just like if this tells us how our students are doing, they are our students.
So are you wanting just East campuses altogether? Because then you've got with East Campus, are you wanting just kids who've gone through TSD, no SOC kids? Are you wanting
All of East Campus is TSD kids, 100%. Because even though they are from other schools, they are our kids because they are in our building. So it's all East Campus kids.
So they haven't, but then they're not students who have gone through our system completely, like we're,
Agreed,
I
agreed. They've not gone through our system. From kindergarten through ninth grade, they have eighth grade, they haven't gone through our system possibly, but they are in our high school.
I think if you look at it similarly to like, you know, when we look at, like, for this, we're putting the, like, Troy High and Athens as an
Together.
aggregate. So it's like the three campuses are an aggregate too.
That's what I'm thinking too. Yeah, because we tout saying that.
When she says
our
three
IA
campuses, she doesn't mean, meaning a high school.
Okay,
She
okay,
means
no.
Three
Three
IA.
IA.
Yes.
No, no, I need to say our Troy High, Athens, and IAs as our high school students.
So scrolling to the bottom, there is one tab that is IB specific that I should show since we're on the topic of IA.
Again, yeah.
On the bottom where it's the enrollment participation tab, currently, we have again, all the charts need work. So when I look at this, I would love the number just written above it too, to make it super clear, the frequency. But we have the global acquisition rate, the tri-campus rate, and IA East specifically. So that is the IA specific data that we've collected this one.
I get the IB graduation rate. I'm thinking about PSAT and SAT data also. Like just last week, I think we touted that our IAs has the best SAT score in the state or something like that, just like we are proud of that, we should be proud of giving it here too.
But do you want it separate or do you want it together? I think that's because
Yeah.
Athens and Troy are separate. We have, or together here. So do you just want
All of
I just dumped in with all of this data and then it's just says all Troy located high schools?
That's
Do
ideally,
you
that's
want
what I would like
TCC?
to see.
Yeah,
If that's possible,
Yeah.
sure, TCC or our kids too.
I have to see how hard. that-
That's why it's yeah.
It would be a little work.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
let us investigate. It may not show up immediately, but let us investigate how much work that
Yeah.
would take in order to do that.
I
In
think
order
one
to
of the
aggregate
things
all those
that's
scores.
important to note is when we look at that data, we're looking at it to inform our programmatic choices.
Right.
Our instruction and.
And we don't have a-
That might be, that's not something that we directly influence because it's a consortium decision around curriculum.
Mhm.
And so when we look at, so I have no problem in having a conversation, but if we're gonna name, is it just for the, like, looking at the data, if we're looking at the data's sake? Because from our perspective, when we are looking at that PSAT and SAT data, we look at it to measure our program and to look at our program components. IA uses their diploma acquisition to measure their program and their program success. So like, I think that's why the PSAT data in particular is not specifically useful for program, because for program information, it's not something that we're tending to.
Same thing here too. PSAT and SAT data is not that useful for our program too, because we don't teach
That's not.
for the PSAT or the SAT, but we measure their success based on PSAT and SAT.
That's not true because they talked about it last year. So when they look at the SAT results for English, for example, they can see where the gaps are in the programs. And so they've adjusted the English program at the high school level. They're working on adjusting it so they can meet the needs and gaps that are present in there.
Similarly, for example, last year, that was the first time we saw that our graduation rates, IB graduation rates were going down, right? And program modifications were made to improve it the year after.
Diploma acquisition.
Yeah,
Not-
diploma acquisition, yeah, not graduation, you're right, diploma acquisition, right? So if you can't see the data, we don't know what the issue is, if there is any at all, and that's my goal.
Sure, but that is what the trying to campus does, right? So that's what they do, the three of them.
So if it is not able to separate, maybe we could show the tri-campus data too, then maybe.
So, Vital, would you be, I mean, this is just a suggestion because you guys have created an IB tab at the bottom to see what IB data, IB school related data we could show there. So that way we're not mixing SAT data with Troy High and Athens because we don't use the IB data to inform our programming, right? Like this is being done, so we're accountable to the community. So if there are gaps somewhere, they want to know what we're doing to address them. We can't do that at AI in terms of what is being taught.
I think we can, because we are part of the consortium and we have the capacity, we are also, we also.
So
we
if
can
you're
give
gonna
feedback.
look at everybody's data, you wouldn't say, we're just gonna do something for Troy.
Right.
So maybe using everybody, looking at everybody's data.
But maybe we could be part of the tab at the bottom. So it's not, would that be okay?
Yeah, as long as we represent them as well, and we are looking at their measure of success and possibly learn what they need to.
We'll dig.
So like as a
see
program
what
eval.
that-
Yeah.
See what we can
yes.
add that might make some sense.
And I assume the campuses are doing internal program eval through the IB. I mean, I remember being part of that at Morse, and that was,
I guess they are,
that
but
data would be interesting.
we are
to
not
know. Right.
privy to it.
You're
We've
right.
never seen it. That's the thing, right?
More information is better in that way, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how it would inform this group all that much, honestly. I mean, I don't know what we would talk about here that would have a significant impact on what's happening at the tri-campus. Those individuals there together are talking about their acquisition rate and if it's going down, why, and in what test areas did they not do as well in? And then they're targeting whether it's professional learning with staff or additional courses, adjustment of courses, to those particular areas where their acquisition rate went down. It's probably not something that we would get into here.
But aren't we also responsible for that? Because in the end, if they are looking at it, maybe we should get a summary of that, because we don't even do that.
Okay, is it at some point somewhere, and this could just be an email to us, just an explanation of how this works, because it's our school, but it is, we don't, it's not our governance. I think that's what Rich is trying to say. It is not our governance. So if you guys could just maybe, one of you just email us and just explain how how the governance works, where we have as a district influence, where we don't.
Yeah,
We'll
think about this a little
bit.
We'll kick this around and see where it might make sense for us to
Yeah, appreciate
ask.
And I'd be interested in Audra's perspective. Obviously, you live that.
Yeah.
Well, it pops into my head that we have a steering committee. And that's the main governance piece. And certain pieces might come back to a district. But in terms of governance, it's more that steering committee with internal administration. And the PSAT and SAT are not drivers of curriculum. It's very much diploma acquisition and looking at breakdown of individual assessments and papers and things like that, which is done across the 3 campuses by, internally by the people involved. I wouldn't be opposed, you have the diploma acquisition, right, and just kind of like the tri-campus. I don't know that breaking it out into individual scores for 3 different campuses has a significant value. But it's data that we can put with IA so that it's readily available, so people can say, oh, the 3 campuses, this is the average of the 3 campuses. That would be a good item for people that wanted to know.
The governance board, though, maybe this is my lack of knowledge, is, it's the superintendents and the people who work on it, right? In the end, there's nobody representing the community who's looking out for it, right?
No, I would say I would say if the community wasn't happy with the outcome of students coming out of the 3 campuses, they would share their.
How would they do that? What is the body to share that?
When I worked in Birmingham, there were some concerns around funding and facilities. And people spoke to the Birmingham administration. So the superintendent, deputy superintendent, they did bring it to the board because it did involve some financial pieces to it. And then there was a discussion. So I think it's more going to your central office administration. And then if it's an issue that does involve the board, they take it to the board, but sometimes it's not. So it just depends, I think.
So a lot of times you need to be aware of it, that there is an issue, right? And that, I think having the data is what I'm thinking, to be aware of if there is an issue or not. That's all.
Okay.
Anyway, we can take this
Take
off.
it around a little bit and see what makes sense. Okay.
Thanks.
Dr. Recker, while you're on the
Good conversation.
data piece here.
Yes.
So you said MSTAT, PSAT, SAT, grade level aggregate, again, subgroup data?
What
Will
was
there
that?
be subgroup data?
We planned to just do grade level.
Why not subgroup?
Well, I think subgroup will be something we'll add down, we'll add.
We'd add it.
Yeah,
Since it's like.
because that will be something that we have a particular interest in measuring.
Mhm.
Yeah, so in order to get started, we will get this going, but the interest would definitely be on subgroup data. Because we anticipate seeing growth in those areas.
Right, yeah. And then would you be adding other standardized assessments as they come in, like what's the one in secondary that's being
NWBA.
NWBA? Would those be there? Would you plan to add them? At what pace?
I'm honestly unsure at this time. I think I would like to see the first draft to see what kind of story it tells the community, to see if there is more information needed from there. I keep thinking about what the purpose of it is, right? And it's for the community to feel that we're accountable for our resources and our programming and that we have plans in place. So I think if more data was needed, I'd be happy to include it.
Okay. Have you looked at other samples like from other districts?
We have.
Okay, and they're similar, you'd say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. Lots, I would also say lots of variance though, too.
Yeah, depends what community has.
Yeah, the hardest part was trying to figure out how to make it narrow enough that it tells a story to the typical community member who might go on. Our first few touch points of it were just actually honestly far too much data that it was confusing to navigate.
And
So
that's
I was
not-
trying to simplify.
Yeah,
correctly.
and that's not to say, like, this is public facing, but not to say we, as a board, we can't get additional data that may not be displayed.
Yes, that's been a big learning we've had in the last week as it started to shape,
Mhm.
is thinking about what is data that our average resident wants to see and interact with, and then what is data for the various other groups. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would imagine when this information is presented to us, it would have the breakdown for subgroups and things like that.
Yes, yeah,
It'll be important for strategic planning, I think.
yeah.
We're about to embark on that again, soon.
Is the goal to have only one dashboard, just public facing, or is there a secondary dashboard that we, our administration and board can see without having to reach out to Christine and Chris? Or
I think there's additional information there's always going to be more granular level information that our building folks are utilizing through the MTSS process. They're looking for that to inform instructional practices, our curricular offerings, and so forth. So there's going to be more granular information available that we can certainly make available. I think it's really important to recognize that there's a front facing in other words, right, tells a story, and how much of that back facing information is really of value, and what does it need to look like, and in what manner does it make the most sense for us to be presenting that, and so forth. We're still working through that, but it will inform strategic planning. It will involve more detailed information related to subgroups and so forth. Again, because we're going to want to measure growth. That's going to be really important as we move forward. So as we move forward, it's creating the amount of data that makes the most sense, both at a front-facing level and then behind the scenes. But what we don't want to do is be chasing data. And be chasing. We want whatever data we're looking at to tell the appropriate story, inform our practices, and so forth.
And I think we need to look at this. I mean, first of all, this is a start. It's a living document. We may see data up here that doesn't really tell us anything, in which case we say, you know what, let's put that aside, or, maybe we don't look at that, periodically. So I think we need to go into this as, this was the first blush attempt for the board saying, here's some things we'd like to see that we're interested in. I think we need to let them put the data together for us and then have an opportunity to look at, what is it telling us? What isn't it telling us? And then we'll continue to adjust. I mean, this is there obviously is, we want to put this on our website, but another purpose of this is to be a tool that helps inform us in terms of, are we putting our resources in the right place, our staff, putting the right emphasis on, talent development in the right place and so on.
So the next tab then is athletic participation. And Mr. Jansen first started out by showing like total participation in last season by fall, winter, spring. He naturally broke it down between boy and girl sports since a lot of them were coded that way. And then you asked Mr. Jansen to do something. He's very thorough, I've learned. So we had to really narrow him down, and he has since helped us make by what our kids are participating in by each season as well too. Some of them we need more information on still, and we're drilling down on from there.
Were we curious about this information, like from a purpose standpoint, like maintain sports, add sports?
Yeah, I think this really, from our perspective, is we know when students are involved, that for us, it's kind of a belonging piece.
Yes.
You know, that when they're involved, they're more engaged, both academically and they're in school. So from an attendance perspective,
But it almost begs the point, I had the same thought that, you know, and it may be that if we're looking at a surrogate measure of engagement, you're looking at, you know, clubs, theaters, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I, you know, it's interesting because I specifically remember when my kids transitioned from middle school to high school, teachers telling, you know, the parent-teacher conference, you know, you really need to make sure your kid finds a club or a sport or whatever, because, you know, if they don't become engaged in high school, you know, it's going to be a more difficult transition for them. And so this sports is one big
Is one big,
measure of
yeah.
engagement.
yeah.
I mean, that could inform us as well as too, is like, where are you spending, you know, is there a sport that you guys do? I mean.
Yeah.
I think we could keep it there for now, but maybe a measure would be at some point, even just getting a survey of the kids, of the students, and just getting a percentage of students who are involved in either a club or a sport and or both, just to get a percentage of how many of your students are involved with something outside of, in something, and to identify what is the gap of students who might not be.
We're looking at adding that to our belonging survey and those students to identify, I belong to a club, a sport, fine art, something.
I'm okay with leaving the athletics on there for now and then seeing like what it might morph into later.
And recognize this is an alphabetical order, it's
Yeah.
not of importance, so.
Yeah.
So my comment with sports is, if you look at sports, it's a lot more granular than the test scores kind of thing.
Yep.
So maybe we should go a little higher and see what percentage of our students are participating in at least one sport. That level, and then see maybe where, this almost tells me to the level of which sport is more popular. And I don't know if that's that important compared to how many students are truly taking advantage of our sports, and how does that help? Maybe what percentage of them are scholar athletes? Maybe that's what is more important than the number of students in sport. That's important, but that's at a lower level than that, I think.
You can sort of predict like academic achievement by eligibility. You aren't playing if you're not eligible, right? Academically, but not.
Keep sports and academics almost at the similar level is what I'm thinking.
But he already told you, Matt
overachieved.
This is his narrowed down version. There were like 15 cards.
So that's like going, way too deep.
We are also going to be collecting, this was again kind of a lagging or leading, another belonging data point. We were going to track fine arts participation too. And Emily Joy Walker, our new coordinator for fine arts K-12, is finding that it's best just to collect that from each person who oversees each programming. So she's working on that currently. Going back up though, again, this is just organized like alphabetically right now. We will be looking at attendance rates, and we have grouped them by levels. This right here is not the most recent data. This is 23-24 even. So we're waiting on the most recent to be released, and it's by elementary, middle, high school, and then the state average. When you scroll down to absenteeism rates, then this is tracking the number of kids defined as chronically absent, so missing 10% or more of the school year. This is a super interesting shape of a chart.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That
It's a lot more than I thought. That is longer than I thought.
and then here's kind of your context for that chart. So the state average of amount of kids that are chronically absent, just shocking. Our district, the Oakland average, and then our Troy School District average by 23-24 standards. We are also going to be then tracking suspension rates by level, elementary, middle, and high school, and as well as by month. And we have an initial data point that October is a rough month for some reason. So we're working on those charts as well. Everything wears off.
Why? I don't know.
Honeymoon's over.
Yeah. So those were what we thought would be the attendance and behavior indicators. We also have a graduation rate section. These are
Can attendance and behavior data be got for IA also? Or is that not possible?
By just the Troy campus.
Yes.
They would be captured in the high school.
Right, okay, so it is part of our
Yeah,
high school,
they've
okay,
captured-
that's all.
They're not, that's right, they're on a different, they don't
They're
get college school, they're on,
Star.
Yeah.
Their data is processed through Bloomfield House.
yeah, that's right.
Okay, and it's not possible at all.
Their attendance data and all of their discipline data is processed through Bloomfield House. So the coding is different.
They're coded as one school too. So you would have to separate out
Manual.
all, yeah.
We really treat them as a stepchild.
They actually are doing very well. And they're-
I know they are, but we don't.
Districts, and so, that conversation and relationship is really important. And Patrick's very much a part of the high school principal team and a part of all of the work that's going on. They're just structured differently. And so their structure and the data collection for that building is just a different mechanism because it's not a traditional comprehensive school. So it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just different. And I think
Get it.
our reporting mechanism would have to be different. So if we really want to go down the rabbit hole and dig into IAE, I think we would need to have that as probably a little bit of a separate page. It just doesn't fit the same way in these data pieces.
While I am more interested in IAEs, that is our school, but even having a data for entire IA that is similar also can help, right? Yeah.
So is TCCHS in our high schools on?
Yeah.
It is,
Okay, so
yeah.
that's good.
Good question.
And their data's in here.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. High school includes TCCHS. And then, let's see here, did I skim this? We also wanted to track dual enrollment. So this is by year.
Is it like, is that how many kids or how many classes?
This is number of kids.
Got it. At
But-
least one class or?
Number of kids in at least one class.
I think it's based on like ninth grade, they have one, 10th grade, they have two classes like that. They have a schedule, I think, right? For two languages.
I'd have to
Necessarily.
look at more information.
No, they don't.
Yeah, I could.
Yeah, they can access dual enrollment. Really,
Can you just say
at
something?
any time, depending upon whether the course is otherwise offered.
It's not like the early middle college.
That's not
That's
that. This is like you're taking a class at a community college that qualified. It's something
I
like
got confused.
Early college is also part of this.
Oh, it is.
It would
Okay.
be considered part of it.
But it's not just early.
It's not just right.
Okay.
So the big jump from 23, 24 to 24, 25 is because of our addition of early middle college or no?
We haven't studied those numbers. I couldn't.
Okay.
Okay. Fine arts participation, Emily Joy Walker is collecting for us. Mike Monaco, our supervisor of CTE, has also got us some initial data that, like all the charts, still need some reworking of number of kids who are in various CTE programs. He's trying to somehow visually show the amount of kids who enroll, which would be the dark blue, versus those that fully complete and receive the credential. Here in the chart, it still needs a little work, the overlay, to be read easily, but that's his goal. He also has a little note here that I guess in his role, he's learned a lot more about the educational requirements of CTE teachers to fully get kids to complete them, therefore, like there are specific requirements for the staff. And he's made some big changes, I guess, in the last 6 months to get that fixed. So he wanted me to have a caveat here that the numbers are gonna look even better soon because he's figured that out.
Key
I
is
guess.
having certified staff, number one, so that you can get funding for it. And then number two, series of the coursework in the appropriate series in order for students to take those and get completer status.
Is this, so if you added the yellow, dark blue and yellow together, it would show you the total number of students enrolled in CTE? Like I look at marketing, it's really tall bar. Is that what that means?
I have to ask Mike.
Okay,
about
I'd
that.
almost like to see both, like how many enrolled and the completer now, or if that is there and I just don't understand
So
it.
the completer component is a series of classes. So
Okay.
for many of our students, they take kind of what we were talking about earlier, and the question of do they have to take the class to participate? We have students who might take one marketing class and not the series. So they would take and complete marketing one,
Mhm.
but maybe not marketing one and marketing two,
Got it.
and give you the completer status. So each one of these programs has a series of courses that are linked in order to be able to earn completer status.
Got it.
And many of our students, their intention is never to complete because they just are interested in learning a little bit about these courses. So just so you.
Yeah, that was my point. It may not,
Right.
we need to be careful that that doesn't look at as a bad thing.
Like,
When
yeah.
it may be
They
that
kinda
a student just.
bad.
learns
Right.
to-
Yeah.
For many of our students, they'll take one marketing and decide, nope, I'd rather go ahead and try a different elective because
Yeah.
I like it, which is exactly what we want.
So yes,
I
I
just
think
curious about
we need to make sure that this doesn't look like,
That's
you know,
cool.
our students are failing or whatever.
Not completing, whatever.
Thank you.
We can talk to Mike.
Yeah.
What
How to,
appropriate way to.
So we
It
can
almost-
demonstrate the
it
growth of the
almost-
program and
Maybe,
whether it's one
maybe
class
people
or
who have
five.
participated, and then another one is people who have gotten certification.
Yeah.
Just different
Completely
types.
different numbers.
We definitely want to show that, that we're growing
Right.
our CTE programming because we value CTE programming. So we want to demonstrate that more students are taking advantage of it. And ideally, they're strong enough programs where students are staying in them in order to be completers. Recognize when never have 100% because
I don't know, maybe the first time around you show how many, one, have a graph that doesn't go to 800 because it's completely skewed and you can't,
Yeah.
it's hard to tell what those lower numbers are. Do you maybe start with how many students have completed the program in the last year as it starts to saying we've had, I don't know, if you add up all the students, is it 200 students who have completed a CT program, which I almost, to me, that would be almost I might be wrong, but a better measure of over time, how many students are completing CT programs.
And would we include the students that go to the OSTC, the OTEC sort of programs? These aren't on here, right?
Those are not.
Okay, like, should we look at our kids that are going and how many and what are they doing? And I don't know.
Not many.
So
do.
maybe start with the easiest,
Yeah, I mean, this
with
is.
the smallest number of information, so it doesn't look like.
And do we want historical numbers for this over time?
Probably.
Just a question.
It demonstrates growth if we have.
Well, I would start with, let's get the data.
Yeah.
And start moving
take
forward.
this back.
because-
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
I
say,
guess-
I wouldn't go backwards at all.
Yeah, we may not have any historical yet.
When you're my work, it's, I keep trying to relate these to the pillars. And, this is sort of like college to career.
Yeah.
This is one measure of college to career. But there are other, like, I think of like our our CAP program, or, are there other, even some of the, the project-based learning kind of stuff that kids do is all part of college to career. And by the way, universities have now like totally embraced college to career. That is the new hot thing. And so to figure out the appropriate set of measures that demonstrate that while in high school, our kids are getting, I shouldn't say college to career, what do we call it? We call it K to career or
Early
something.
childhood to
Yeah,
career.
early childhood to career. It's, measuring how the different ways our students are getting exposure, ultimately to career. This, I think, is an important one, but it's not all, it's not the end all be all, because for a lot of kids, they're not gonna do this.
It'd be interesting to look at that, all
Yeah.
those other, some of those other
Yeah,
measures
so,
too.
I mean, and again, part of the beauty of this is, to really, ultimately, as we get the data, talk about what is this really telling us, or what do we want it to tell us? Are there other things that we should be thinking about? But again, maybe just because I've had the experience of a number of rounds of strategic planning, those pillars, really, which, were a foundation in educational research, you've trained me well, I keep thinking of these measures around the pillars. And so the, early childhood to career, what are the right set of measures to really think about that is important.
I have a similar thought. I started reading that disengaged teen. The one thing that it talks about is, one is participation, two is engagement, and three is now the result, as in like the actual learning part, right? If we make our dashboard in the sense that its participation is like our attendance, right? And absenteeism, and then engagement is like these kind of things, learning in like project-based learning or CTE or those things. And then comes actually our test data or results. If you think of it in that way, maybe the dashboard would look different. And just a thought.
I like Nancy's explanation of it is this is kind of like our initial like dip in the water.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm thinking as we go through this strategic planning process, many of us have not been through that before. I think that will help us kind of influence and think about this differently. And, next fall, this may look different. And I think that's kind of what you want too.
Right. Yeah, this should be kind of a living document that, serves us in terms of
Yeah.
getting the information we need to make better decisions. Okay, good.
And that's the end right there. So very, as Dr. Macheski said,
Where would our club participation come in here?
So the club piece is, like I mentioned earlier, that is information we want to gather.
Okay.
It's really hard to gather. So we probably will add it to our belonging survey and ask students to self-report.
Okay.
Because otherwise it's just too difficult. It's too widespread in order for us to chase that and get accurate. So if we started with students self-reporting, we'd have a similar measure year to year.
So
It's the end result of this is you really want to know what are the percentage of students that are not at all engaged.
Yeah.
Right.
Who are the
That's,
kids?
it's great to see all the engagement and you're probably double counting students and, but it's really, who are the kids that
are fed and left out.
Right, and then why?
Yeah.
Get to the why and what's getting in the way of them being engaged in some meaningful way. And then that becomes our work.
So
It's interesting to your point is, are those non-engaged students thriving as well as
thriving, that's the right word. Is this dashboard very heavy towards the high school? Are we missing a lot of elementary and middle, or what can we do to get that data too? What data?
what data?
I mean,
That seems to be, there's.
yeah, that's the question, right? So how do we, absenteeism for everybody,
Yeah.
right? That's the only, is that the
Attendance
only
and
one?
suspension.
Attendance and absenteeism, that's the only one, K through 12.
No,
Attendance, behavior.
Suspension.
Oh,
Test results. And then the
test result.
test
The
results.
end step is three to 8.
Yeah.
M step, okay,
And eventually we might have other assessments, but it'll grow, you said.
okay. So we are okay with the list that we have, right?
I mean, I guess you could do like the, to your point, the early childhood to career, like I've seen some good data sets presented before about our preschool participation rates over time, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know where to go exactly, but
Color code those green.
I think this is a good part.
it's areas.
Yeah.
Appreciate your input. We'll
Good.
keep
Yeah.
hammering
Way to go.
it again. Our goal would be to share this publicly end of September.
Okay,
Get it to a point where it's ready to go.
Okay.
and we could continue to give our thoughts, right?
Absolutely, yeah. We've learned that it could go any direction. So
I know.
we're like, we just have to get something on it because we've had a lot of
Yeah.
shapes already to it. So
Good.
But I do think most people who, first of all, I don't think most parents are gonna go look at this. I think most of the people who do go look at this will want, not so much detail into everything. They just kind of
Yeah.
want an overview. And then I think ultimately the people who want a lot more data are a very small set of people. And I think, so I do think like, it's figuring out what level on this dashboard, what level of data will be important? Because if there's too much information, then it can also be confusing and overwhelming.
That was my big realization about a week ago. It's way too specific, and for the average user, it would
Yeah.
be not something they could interface with or make meaning of, so.
It can also, like, I go to the MI schools data and I can get lost in it. I mean, there's so much data in it, right? Which sometimes is good and sometimes it's bad because there's so much data that unless you know what you're doing and you understand what it is, the data doesn't make any sense at all. So,
And if it lacks perspective and context,
Yeah.
can easily get lost.
I just caution, like, I appreciate your comment about like the average user, but like the average person, adult in Troy, parent is college educated, is made a very conscious decision to live here and send their kids to school here. So I think we have to also be cautious about, like, some parents want that. And if it's a small group, that's fine. But like, if you look at our demographic of our community, we have a very highly educated community, pretty wealthy community. Their expectations of what we provide is pretty high. So I think there's a balance, what I'm trying to say.
But most people I know don't check any information and they still will come to me for one back.
Can you tell
Right,
me
is it
the
Troy High? Like, they
absenteeism
have
rate?
kids at Troy High and they don't even want to go check in their emails. They want me to provide that information to them. So, no, I mean, I think all of us
Never had that
get that.
experience, so I'm gonna go with, okay.
If that parent is not checking the email coming from Mr. Ramponi to see when the important dates for Troy High are, I'm trying not to swear, they are not gonna go, they are not gonna go on the Troy School District website to check all of this information. So, but I think as with everything, it's like, if you want more information, this is who you reach out to.
I agree with Amina here, in that our parents are very well educated. But at the same time, we live in the social media world, right? And if you see one graph that, for whatever reason, I mean, first of all, if the graph shows excellent information, it goes to every social media, says, wow, look how good the district is. And the same way, if one graph shows really bad data, it's going to be the end of the world, Troy School District is doomed, kind of thing. So it can go either way. You just have to be
It's about
careful.
balance,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
And respecting all aspects of our
Yeah,
community.
exactly.
I just think our parents are busy.
That's why they reach out to me to ask for back to school curriculum night is in Troy.
80% of them are busy, 20% of them want all this information. There's always that.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks, that direction.
Shall we plunge on or do you need a bio?
I'm good.
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right, let's do art.
Dan, can you pick that up? Thanks. So, I put forward a recommendation on the 15th and the communique on the 15th. We reiterated that recommendation, and the recommendation is based upon the enrollment as we know it currently, and the conversation that took place last spring. And so these few slides were just designed to kind of show where we were. So if you want to, Dan, this was all going to be review, but these were our goals. We've all been through that. The why behind this conversation, and all the data that we looked at. And so what the board challenged administration to look at option C. So what you see here, this slide is option C. It's what we identified would be the outcome if we took the entire option C. And which included moving Troy Union to Smith, included making some adjustments to Somerset placements at the middle school level, keeping individuals with their cohorts and so forth. And that effectively made Smith, would make Smith the largest middle school and bring the others in line with one another. So that's where we started. And from there, we had multiple meetings. We had we gathered input. We had a survey and so forth. And then we as a team had several conversations after that. And then we've internally had some conversations. So the next slide is what we're recommending for conversation at this point. It essentially, it does not change existing boundaries. So, to your question earlier today, why did that? It does not, the option that we're recommending does not change existing boundaries.
Mhm.
It takes the pathways for Somerset students to 2 buildings that are currently, we have 6 buildings that Somerset go to. Bemis and Schroeder would continue to go to Bolin. Martell and Leonard will go on to Smith to Troy High. Waddles and Morse would go on to Baker to Athens, or Troy High, depending upon. No, Troy High. Yes, I'm sorry, Troy High. Everybody goes Troy High, right?
Yeah.
So it's 2 different. So taking those 6 buildings and splitting between the 3 middle schools. Okay. And then the other caveat to this recommendation is we would remove the open enrollment option from to Larson. So essentially Larson would become similar, we would handle Larson similar to how we've handled Bolin for the last 10 years or so, which is there are no open enrollments within the district. So essentially close that building.
Troy.
Right. We do know that we have a number of Troy Union students families that opt on an annual basis to open enroll from Smith to Larson. It's about 20 annually that we get. That would be eliminating that. You see that the number of about 190 students would be coming out of Bolin that were otherwise assigned to Bolin and be assigned over time between Baker and Smith. Okay. And then we would continue to push any new families that enroll at, if a new family were to come to Somerset, let's say enroll next Monday at Somerset, and they had a middle school student, we would put them in that pathway to either Baker or Smith.
So then what this will then do is just keep things as they are. A part of the Troy Union students go to Smith, a part go to Larson, and there's no, other than if you have a sibling currently at Larson, there's no more.
Right. So if you look at the next one down, and this is where we identified, this is our current fall enrollments. And this is where we identified by fall of 27, what those enrollments would look like. So it does keep Larson bigger, but it brings the other 3 essentially in line with one another.
And then you said on the previous slide, open enrollment to Smith, like as an example, would be
Yes.
allowed. So that number is sort of variable.
Yes, which it currently is a lot. Oh, there's
It
open
is.
enrollment to Smith, Baker.
Oh,
Are currently allowed. We allow for those. We don't get very many, but they are allowed for. If a family is looking for just a little smaller building,
I see.
or maybe they live in a neighborhood, but their family have grown up in a particular building, let's say Smith, and they might just want their child to go there, or if they know that they might be moving into that area and they want their child to start, we've allowed for those open.
Got it. Thanks. I didn't actually know that.
So for when we're working on Larson has to go to the Old Smith, those numbers are okay with.
Oh, they'll fit.
They'll fit, okay.
Yeah, we do know that even come fall, we are likely in fall of 26, when we open Smith, Bolin will be at a point where we will likely use a portion of the new Smith building for whether they be combined classes, maybe they're combined math classes, for instance. Christine is already working with the principals on a solution to that challenge.
That might be kind of fun for the bowling kids to, at least, if they're being moved.
At least they get to check out the new place.
Yeah.
The bulk
Get to know more kids.
of schools of choice students that we enrolled 65 schools of choice students. The bulk of those, we have those in the Smith and Baker feeder pattern currently. But of course, they're kindergarten and first grade, so you can see the impact of that for a while.
So Rich, how does that work? So our smaller elementary school, for example, is Hill, which feeds into Larson. yet we want to send them into Smith, how are we managing that?
No, the Hill kids would continue to go in their current pathway.
Which
They
would
would-
Larson, but,
Yeah, they would go to Larson Athens. They
but
would
my
change.
point is, when we're doing open enrollment, we try and place them in an elementary school that is lowest enrolled, right? So in this, oh, Martel is currently lowest, so we're gonna do Martel. So Hill-
Martel and Leonard are two of our smaller enrolled.
Oh, smaller than Hill now?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, because we put a lot of the GSRP classrooms in Hill, is that why, or
That was slowly growing.
Yeah.
is it?
That community is
That's
starting
good
to
to
turn
know.
over. Costello community is
That's
starting
good
to
to know.
turn over. We're
Okay.
starting to see, in fact, Costello's over
Not as-
400, I think now. And they were for a long while sitting in the low 300s. And so, we're
Okay.
starting to see those more affordable neighborhoods as houses turn over. People are grabbing them up, and sounds like
That's good
it's
to know.
younger families that are doing that,
That's good to
which
know.
is exciting to see. So this is the recommendation. This is the least disruptive. It is, allows us the flexibility to just keep our eyes on it and see what happens. And with the caveat that if something were to occur where we needed to make additional changes, we would bring those back to you for, as recommended changes.
I imagine in a couple years, I imagine in a couple years, we might be looking at where we'll be in 2030 in terms of overall middle school enrollment and what that might mean.
We're essentially, you want to go over the numbers, Dan? Kind of what we're anticipating from both a budget standpoint and.
Yeah, so we are, from a budgetary standpoint, I budgeted 175 FTE reduction going into this year. So that's kind of the number we'll stick with. And then obviously each year we'll just kind of see how that checked out. Thus far, I think the fall 25 numbers are a little better than the projections are from Plant Moran. So that's always a good sign to see. So we'll just keep tabs on that, but we keep track of the actual historical data in our budgeting model. So then we'll be able to play with that number each year and then updating it accordingly. But I think this recommendation at least gives us the opportunity to start balancing them out without changing any existing boundaries. And then, we'll have to circle back again probably in a year and see where we're at in terms of enrollment and then compare that to kind of where Plant Moran has us projected. But thus far, it seems like a pretty good fall number in line with what we're expecting.
And we ended up with 60, plus was mentioned, 65 schools of choice students, which is actually pretty good in comparison to kind of when we went out. We went out and advertised fairly late. You heard me mention that before. And we didn't do a lot of,
Intentionally.
yeah, intentionally, we didn't do a lot of very overt advertising either. It was really fairly limited. If I have it on the schedule to bring back for conversation in December with the board, schools of choice. And if the board were to decide we wanted to move forward again with a number either similar to this year or whatever that number might be, depending upon, what enrollment looks like at the time, we would want you to take action in December so that we're in the early January timeframe for advertising and so forth. And at that point, we would have no problem at all. We'd have a pretty significant waiting list, I would imagine by then. Part of the challenge that we do have, and important to know with schools of choice, is that families, even though they want to come to Troy, proximity is still important to them. And so, for instance, we had a family that was approved via schools of choice that lives in Royal Oak, where Schroeder would have been their closest building. We placed that student in Martel. And they chose to not take advantage because of proximity. And, Schroeder is closed to open enrollment. So we chose to make that option available to them.
Would we have given a choice at Morse? Morse would have been better, closer, maybe? No? No?
Morse is closed because we
Morse
have,
is closed, isn't it?
well, it's closed from the perspective of those classes are full right now.
Okay.
We wouldn't add new families to
Okay.
already close to
So-
contractual max classrooms. So where we had space, Martel, Leonard, is where
Makes
we
sense.
is where we pushed families, and some chose to take advantage, chose to take advantage, and some just did not. So it's not always, you get 100 families that are approved via schools of choice, not all 100 may end up going simply because where we have space is not
So, yeah.
conducive to where
I,
they're interested in.
But if you get out early and you know people turn that down.
Yeah, we'll have a waiting list.
You'll have.
Yeah.
I have an academic question. It's very academic. So there's multiple school districts in the city of Troy, especially like corners where, and I hear always from kids who go to Warren Con School District, parents, not the kids, parents whose kids go to Warren Con. And it's always confusing for them, the fact that they go there. What is a process for possibly including them into our district? Or how does that work? That's why I asked, I presented it saying it's an academic question.
It's a political question.
It's all the questions.
It's a political.
Yeah, board, the state of Michigan.
Yeah, both boards would have to sign off
Yeah.
for it to be
On a ballot or something?
voted on, and then the ISD would manage that process.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's how it happens.
So if they have to do that, let's say if the parents want it, do they go to their boards and?
They would go to one board.
The board would have to.
I'm sure they won't do it, but yes, yeah.
Yeah. Like, here you go, here's.
So one other thing that we're likely to bring as a recommendation, and it wouldn't bring a significant amount of families, but it might address for some families, that is tuition. Years ago, we used to have a tuition policy. For public schools can.
Birmingham does, yeah.
Public schools can offer tuition. You identify a number and then you want to walk through it. Dan, how that works?
Yeah, so typically a tuition number is calculated pretty close to what your foundation allowance is. It might be maybe 10 or 15% higher typically to just cover the administrative side of collecting the money and all of that. But that's something typically in the early part of the calendar year, we would bring forth to the board and have board approved tuition rates established for any resident or non-resident that lives in the city but isn't assigned to Troy, that could then come here outside of the school of choice process. So they would then not go to their district that they're assigned to. That district would then not get that FTE, and then the parent or family would then pay for the tuition to come to this district.
Does their district have to release them?
Nope, they just don't claim them.
Okay.
So they're just not part of it.
So how does that work? I mean, why not take the school of choice instead? Why tuition?
Because to it, there's no lottery system to it,
School
so.
choices, kindergarten, first
Yeah.
grade, no seats.
Okay, so this
Not
is
whenever
for-
you want, yeah.
Well,
It's
school
just
choice is our decision. You could do school of choice.
No, yeah,
Do all.
but we've done it, we typically just, how many, I mean, I do actually know somebody who went to Birmingham with that tuition-based system, but do we have any idea realistically how many students that draws from Birmingham or Bloomfield Hills? Like, is it 5, is it 15, is it?
I would assume it's probably gonna be less than 15,
Oh,
but
this
we
is-
do have a number of families that have properties within the district that are for that reason. So just to have residency here, so they always have 2 properties, and then they lose their exemption status on their other one because they want the primary here. And so this just gives them an additional option essentially to admit themselves here.
Proof that some of our parents do really care.
Schools, I mean, they'd be,
You're gonna buy that.
It'll be a
No,
So we have done tuition, we did tuition.
I guess that would, so if you were to bring that to us,
Not for a long period.
I-
Full historic.
I would want to know data, you know, if we can get information from Birmingham and Bloomfield. You know, I guess you charge 10-15% more, but it is just, yeah, to see if it's.
can we do that by restricting, like, say, parents who are in the Troy boundary can do this as tuition or no, or we can't place any restrictions like that?
The revised school code doesn't really get that specific, so we would have to run the parameters of a program, I think, through our legal counsel just to make sure that we're good, but
You
the
can
state
have
really
more
says,
flexibility when it
yeah.
comes to tuition.
Okay.
right.
And I know at one point there was some option for the parents to claim if they don't go to public school some money? Is that still, that's not there in Michigan, right? There's no such thing.
There's no voucher program, right?
Lots of other states though.
I know.
Yeah. Yes.
Lots of other states.
We have, so under our constitution, public dollars cannot go to private school. So some of those things exist like in Arizona and other places, but we don't.
Yeah, but this is still a public school, so it's still not a private school, so I wonder if that works.
Yeah, you can do it. It's in the law allows for it.
So the law allows for them to claim state
For the
funding and
tuition.
get that, yeah. No, they don't. right?
For a public school to charge tuition.
You have to charge tuition, but
We're
they-
not,
they-
we're not
they
taking
wouldn't
public
get
money, we're
reimbursed for
taking
that.
private money
Yeah.
for
Right.
public
Yeah.
education.
Taking the money from the parents'
Get a
tuition.
foundation.
We're-
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But the parent doesn't have claim to the foundation payment.
Wouldn't that be, yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, got it, okay.
So the parent essentially choosing, instead of a private school, to pay tuition to a public school.
Mhm.
So it's not even at a city level that can change the boundaries of school district, it's actually,
The school, the parents have to petition their local school district to release them basically in order to be accredited by another school district. That school district would have to accept them.
I see.
And then the ISD would go about the process of
Redistrict.
Then redistrict, okay.
I think that did happen in Warren years ago. There is a portion of Troy that was accredited at one point. This goes back a long way.
Some Warren came to Troy?
Yeah, it's a small group.
I think.
It's interesting.
In
There's no school
today's.
district that's gonna be.
It's not something,
For students, you know, if we were in a growing state, maybe there'd be a possibility.
no,
But in consolidation.
like I said, it's
we're
an
not that
academic
space, but
question.
yeah.
So if you're comfortable with this
Nothing.
recommendation, we bring this forward on this 6th.
I do, well, this is the best option. I just do want to state the obvious. We didn't meet either of our goals that we wanted to set out to do. We got close. We got very close with both of them, but we didn't meet either one. Didn't-
You know, the way I look at this is, there were two things. One is we committed to the community, we would make a decision on this. This is the least disruptive, the least painful.
Right.
When we then have the conversation and continue to look at where are we going in the future of, you know, challenges with enrollment.
I do think the schools are a little bit more balanced than they
Yeah,
are. So, yeah,
the other two schools got balanced, so Baker, Nolan Park and Baker got balanced. It's the Larson and Smith that didn't get balanced.
Oh, well, I mean, it's a lot closer than if we did absolutely nothing.
Mhm.
You would see some.
Yeah.
For-
Fifth drops into the
Yeah.
the only issue that still remains is that, you know, Troy Union kids are double.
Switch, right, but, yeah.
I was a Troy Union kid who was double split 30 years ago, so it's, I guess, you know, it's for whatever reason, we haven't been able to,
So,
as a district, solve that.
Yeah.
But something tells me decisions that are gonna be potentially made 2, 3, 4 years down the line are gonna be a little more complicated than
That's
just
Yeah.
moving a line or two, so.
correct,
That's what I.
correct.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm also proud that we had opportunity to really hear the community. And yeah, I think we were like almost set the goals, but I think that one of the big pieces is the community felt heard, and that's important too. And so that buys, it earns us and the district some credibility in terms of, as you said, like in the future, if we need to look at other things to be like, okay, we're gonna hear you again. We promise.
Yeah.
Might not be pretty, but
So,
Well, and I also think we go forward because the survey data on
Yeah.
schools of choice gives us some flexibility.
Yep.
right,
Which before we got into a point where we're getting flack from, again, maybe a minority, but vocal group.
now you have data to support your
Yes.
decision, which is always nice.
Yes.
I'm optimistic, while I'm unhappy that our newest school is gonna have the lowest enrollment. But I'm optimistic as the school comes up and running
Nice.
Yeah.
and they see how good it is, potentially people will change their mind and want to go there.
Mhm.
And it might not be bad for the couple of years that that Bolin kids are gonna be at the
Yeah.
Old Smith and that the Larson kids are gonna be at the Old Smith.
So we have some.
This might actually work a little bit better if there's flexibility in the new building.
Okay, good discussion. Shall we go through the next other items here? So this is really, we will need to pass resolutions on all three of these things, so we wanted to have some discussion. Who is all registered for the leadership conference in Traverse City?
So I'm registered, but I might not be able to.
Okay,
So
I'm not going.
so definitely 5 of us, maybe Matt.
okay,
You know, board approval for that because it's in district.
no,
It's in the state.
we need to approve our delegate.
The delegate.
Oh, the delegates, I'm sorry, yeah. But, right.
Maybe question with the delegate.
Oh. you should-
I nominate.
Maybe just be one.
I didn't know it was either, and then they nominated me last time, so.
It's like you just-
Is that all?
That's what-
It's a super important meeting that happened in the beginning.
At the very beginning.
You're selling it, you're selling it.
On Thursday evening. So MASB is a membership organization, which means that any changes to bylaws, election of officers, that kind of thing, all have to be voted on by members. And so each district gets a certain number of delegates based on its size that then are officially voting delegates to that delegate assembly meeting. And so that meeting, I don't know, it's like 7 o'clock
Yeah.
on Thursday night.
7 to 8:30.
Yes.
It can go long. It can go long.
Maybe been on this before.
So I don't know, we don't know yet what is
If anything.
what if anything, I mean, sometimes it is such a no big deal meeting because there's a few changes maybe to, some, like we have a list, that the organization has a list of like things that it stands for.
Mhm.
And sometimes there's some wordsmithing every now and then.
Sometimes there's.
Yeah. every now-
It's all like
That's
always.
And comma.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm so
He
excited.
or she
I
slash
feel like I
he
would-
slash he, whatever.
I feel like I would hate
Yes,
like
we need 3 and an alternate. So if there are 3 people that are planning on being there on Thursday, if you've signed up for, CBAs or,
So I was planning on
I
being
did
there
too.
all
I
week
did too.
Thursday this time, so I'm willing to go, because we made Matt do it last year.
yeah.
You made.
Last year, I think it was,
It's a voluntary. Right,
I
right.
didn't go last
It
year.
was very much a volunteer.
So who's not going?
I am not going at all.
You're not.
Matt is-
Nancy,
Like I have that, yeah, because it's.
You're going,
You're-
right? Okay.
yeah. But it would be a great opportunity for our
Should be
new
the
board members.
delegates.
Well, let's
If
say,
it doesn't
Brad,
conflict, don't
that
go,
even if you're
but-
not a delegate, you
You
should
should
still
go.
go and participate.
Yes, you can. You just have to.
I'm
sit-
there.
Right, right.
You have to sit in the
Participation rate.
Oh, if you're a delegate, you get to go behind the fence.
And then you're like, so I don't have to.
I kind of just. I know.
It's,
So.
Four people.
It's so legal mumbo jumbo with words. Okay, so
we need 3.
she's a lawyer. She works, she
Okay.
fits very well into it.
So,
I'll do
Amina,
it.
Stephanie,
Sure.
you want to do it, Audra?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
And then we need,
And you can make.
I'll be alternate.
And
I'll be an alternate.
Aisha can be
Yeah.
on. And then if something happens, I'm coming anyway. And
you spoke to, you have to learn it,
I know, I should.
stay in the background.
I know.
okay, good. All right, so that
Somebody will remind us to go, right? It'll be on our program.
So,
Yeah.
oh yeah, it'll be a.
Yeah, it'll be on.
you'll get an official, when you register, you're gonna get an.
Hey,
You'll say delegate.
You're a delegate.
It's gonna say delegate.
Someone's gonna be campaigning for the comma and or not. Yep.
So.
Okay, so the next item is the Advocacy Institute in Washington, which is taking place February 1st through the 3rd. That we do need to get, we do need to pass a motion on that because that is out-of-state travel. Is there interest in board members attending that? So in addition to the actual conference, there is a day spent on, of course, but they changed
Capitol
it,
Hill.
right?
No, there is a
I
day
thought
spent on.
I thought they came to you versus you. came
So that
to-
was the year before.
Oh,
So 2 years ago, actually, they all came to one conference room and we were sitting in a conference room. But last year, we literally
You
went to
went back to the,
each congresswoman, congressman, or
There was a lot of
senator.
new, because it was just right after the election.
Oh,
Some
okay.
of it was not so well, or not as well organized as the previous year.
Yeah.
Can we do like I'm thinking about it, but can we do a resolution like no more than X number of people? That way
we
it could
can,
be 0 or it could be no more than.
yeah, so I'm just looking at, um, the, the price changes. I think that's part of the reason why. We can certainly do that for, the next one, the 2026 conference, because that's far enough out. But let me see when, the
Before
registration-
November 14th is early bird. After November 14th is standard.
Okay.
For
Yeah.
NSBA or for?
For the
For
advocacy.
the advocacy. So that's actually not bad.
So no more than, what, 3?
So, yeah,
I
so,
would say no more than 3 and then we'll see.
Yeah.
okay, so, well, let's
If you
see,
know, but it's-
are there people here that you don't have to make a commitment, but that are interested, and think their calendar might be open?
I am not. I went the last 2 years and the political environment isn't great, so I would prefer not to go to the national level.
And I know I am traveling that week, so
It's my son's birthday.
okay.
He'd be so happy.
No,
It's a big deal.
I have a feeling it might be nobody.
so should we just say no more than
One,
one?
or
just
what if 2
approve?
people want to say, want to
What,
go?
you want to say no more than
Then
two? You think you have?
I went last year, so I was gonna give someone else an opportunity to go. I loved it. I thought it was great. I mean, I'd love to go again.
I mean, and I
Two,
did.
yeah, no more than 2, because
Okay.
I'm like, yeah,
Say no more than 2 and that doesn't mean that we send anybody.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, it gives us time to decide, yeah.
yeah, because I think I might want to go. but-
Okay, how about San Antonio? So the National School Board Association, which is in San Antonio, Texas.
I would like to go. I skipped last year thinking that I'm gonna go this year.
Okay.
Usually,
Was it the one that was in Atlanta?
yes, that's that
Oh,
one.
I
yeah.
loved this one.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna say maybe because Kendra and I have a proposal in just
Yeah,
on the CAP program.
nice.
So maybe MASB had no interest in the proposal. So they didn't.
Sad.
Yeah,
They're
they
missing
did
out.
not. But we're still waiting to see, which, again, a lot of NSBA is very career focused. So we're pretty proud of the CAP program. So we would like to share that with others. So anyways, we may be lucky in that one. Who else? Anyone else? It's, I got,
Oh, you got me.
me.
I'd love to go.
I got Aisha.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm a maybe.
I'm a maybe. It'll depend on if I go anywhere. for
Yeah, my
spring
calendar
break.
looks
Yeah,
fine.
break is, I'll be coming back the 4th, 5th.
Yeah.
It's April.
It's nobody's
So
birthday.
I probably am a no,
That's great.
like it would be too close.
Should we say then no more than 4?
That sounds good.
Matt, did you want?
to ask?
I mean, I
Now
do,
that
but I
thinking
don't want to
about
have
it,
too many people. And if I'm already going to the Washington DC.
No more than 4?
Like, I mean, I
feel like this is never include you.
no.
No.
Separate districts.
And he went last year because we didn't,
MSBA.
the prior
Missing
board
last
had
year.
made a commitment.
Mhm.
And Judy had registered people and obviously
Yeah.
there was
Wait.
change, so we did not
Yeah.
lose the registration, so Rich went.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that concludes all of our formal business. Let's go around and do roundtable. Audra, any roundtable for you?
Just comment, talking to some IA teachers, they were really excited this year that they were able to make it to the opening day. That was the first time ever, just because the way the calendar year was negotiated. They started a little later, so they were really excited about that. And that I'm gonna share an article with you guys. I'll send it via email, but it's actually, you might not enjoy reading it as much as I did, but it's like kind of like psychological research type stuff. But I thought it meshed in well with, how Rich programmed your opening day with the idea of belonging. But it talked specifically, it was research about how students, on students with ADHD and the concept of belonging in a classroom and how those kids may need different types of support and what that looks like. So I thought that was really interesting, and I'll pass it along to Rich too, and maybe Teaching and Learning will want to take a look at it. But I thought it was really interesting that they were, because sometimes it's a little hard to find research.
Yeah.
And to quantify things like that. So I'll pass that on. That's it. Good.
Great, thank you.
I don't think of anything actually.
Good. Alina?
I'm attending the Government Relations Committee meeting at the Oakland County School Board Association tomorrow. We'll see what additional new information we find out. And I did want to just ask, so, we are gonna talk about middle school, high school start times in October. Is that the plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, Rich, if you could even just give us, I know that you emailed us, I believe last week, but if you could just give us like a little overview of where we are with the state or not with the state.
Budget wise,
Yeah,
uh,
and then that's it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really it for me.
I think we're unfortunately at a standstill right now. I told Nancy, I had lunch with Nancy just on Thursday. I had a conversation, I had conversation with both Sharon McDonald and Tom Kuhn, both playing the other party. I mean, everything is down party lines. Very adamant that if the Dems would just come to the table, we could get this done. We started this process in earnest in April. And then likewise, there's a lack of feeling as if either side is totally committed. And to my understanding, the governor's been fairly quiet, and if not AWOL almost through this entire process. I should say that's public. Anyway, but anyway, so what we think is going to happen is this. It's likely to go down to the wire. And the governor, as it turns out, and you probably read it in the newspaper this weekend, the governor's actually going to be out of country the end of September. She's going to be in Japan and I think Singapore, the end of September. So if things don't get wrapped up around the third week in September, it's not going to, because she's going to be out of country. So she won't be able to sign the budget. So I think there's an interest in trying to expedite this. So what we're going to do is, so there is really no unfortunate, there's no news. My conversation with Representative Boone, though, he was adamant that schools were getting more money, and I pointed out that where that money was coming from, it was just being kind of shifted from one pot to the other, and he said it's coming from the surplus. And I said, the nature of a surplus is it's one-time monies. We would be foolish, as a K-12 entity, to rely upon one-time monies to sustain us over time. He was adamant that those monies have been there year over year. So I said we would agree to disagree. But I did tell both Sharon and Tom that we would be, as a community, we'll be sending out a communication to our community. So we'll be doing that either Thursday or Friday of this week, encouraging our community, letting our community know what's happening, and encouraging them to reach out to their legislator and express their concern that they have a responsibility to provide a budget, and they have advocated that responsibility to date.
John, is that something that maybe, and I know this is not you, but you do communicate with the union. Is that something that the union might also be able to do? Because the teachers don't all live in Troy, so there's the benefit that staff is also from that their representatives are not one of those people. Yeah, so you know,
I had-
if that's something that you
I
guys.
had
might
lunch
be-
with Jason today,
Okay,
and they sent out he sent out a letter to all of the teachers encouraging them to reach out to their legislators.
okay.
So he did send
You
out,
did,
he did
okay,
send that
good.
out, but we will send ours to all TEA as well as
Yeah.
to the community.
I just think it's beneficial, so it's not just going to two reps, that it's going
I would
to,
agree.
to, to wider net, yeah. Mhm.
So we're gonna get that, it won't be it'll be appropriately worded. I think expressing our concern, and the fact that, again, they have a responsibility and they haven't led up to that. They haven't
Can we,
lived up to that.
on that note, can we get, and I know this has been in all of our budgets, and I think it might be 9 weeks worth of, reserve funds that we have, but can we just give like a quick email to the board saying, based on our reserves, this is how many.
Operating.
Think
Yeah,
of
operating
information
days
to have,
yeah.
talking to people.
Yeah.
Because people might ask, I don't know if that's even, that might be appropriate, at the meeting, Rich, if you could just even, when it's your turn to just say, this is where we are, there's been movement, there hasn't been movement, we're lucky that we have reserve funds, this is where they're at, this is why we keep them this high, this is how many weeks, just so people know.
I think the other thing that would be helpful, because again, people will continue to say, it's like Tom Cook, we're giving you more money. But it is more money, but it isn't, that inflation chart, it's not kept up with inflation. So to be able to talk to, yes, we have more money, but it hasn't kept up with the rate of inflation, just a few little facts like that.
Yeah. For
maybe some of your community members who, are persuaded by what we gave the schools.
Mhm. Yeah. We'll put that in the communique this week on the reserve funds, like how much, actual time we have in order to flow. The challenge that we will face though is if they don't get anything done October 1st, our first state aid payment comes October 15th, right? So we'll be floating at least we would be floating at least one pay period. We would continue to float at least a pay period, until such time as we proceed.
So depleting depleting our fund balance.
Good to know.
Yeah.
I mean, the only good thing is there will be many districts that are, fall
Yeah.
well before we do. Doesn't make it right, but,
Right.
And if it stretches longer, right, we do have, I understand the next step would be to borrow money.
in fact,
Um,
is that what Tom Coon told you? Borrow money?
Yeah, we could just borrow.
Yeah, because
Just borrow money.
paying the
Is
7,
it
8, 9, 10% interest
We
rate.
should send the bill to Mr. Coon to pay the interest.
But do we have, are those conversations that would typically be had with your bank or lender at this point, or is it later,
So, yeah, conversations we have had with bankers already are they have proactively reached out to the state to try to create a lending model should this happen, to where then districts could pay back the loan through state aid. So they're already initiating these conversations
Okay.
because they have to act.
So that's happening also, okay.
All the agencies, so
Any idea what the interest rate would?
I don't know those ones, but I know typically payday had, it's like some districts do have to borrow every year, so they'll borrow from future state aid payments to cover their September obligations. So something like that is in the 5-6%. I mean, that was years ago.
That seems really low.
Yeah, that was, last time I did it in a different district, it was. that.
I would think it would be somewhere in the range of
Could be
7 to 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be my
I was gonna say double.
guesstimate would be closer to
What's the current method rate?
10.
Yeah.
Okay. And I did have one other thing I wanted to say. I don't know, I know that it went out to parents, but the new cell phone policies at all the 3 levels. And it's nice to see that something that we took on as a book read to talk about policy changes, produce policy changes. So and that was one of those where we involved the community too, and we had that as a book read with the community. So I think it's nice to see that we took a book, and we're able to do something very concrete with it and involve the community too, so.
Yeah. Action
So I
steps.
thought that was nice, yeah.
Good job.
Okay, she asked most of my questions. I only have two questions. One is, any update on the Athens Theater?
So we provided that short update earlier last week, and Rich and I had an opportunity to meet with the Advocacy Theater Company. And we committed to them that we'd be checking back in with them after they've had a chance to kind of work through and kick off the year with Mr. Vickers. So we've given space to that because I think that's really important. When Rich and I met with those students, they had not yet met with Mr. Vickers for the year. So they've been coming off just kind of the summer of, I think, some natural angst of that change kind of taking place. So they were set to meet with Mr. Vickers on Thursday last week. And this is the first school day since that Thursday. So no, I don't have any additional update other than they're committed to kind of following through and connecting with them. And Mr. Vickers is also committed to supporting them and making sure that they have a successful first play. So Athens kicks off the theater programming for us. Their auditions are underway. And they're going to be just right at it. So that activity should be very helpful and should provide some positive feedback or feedback either way, right? Because we should know how that's working.
Okay, wonderful. Was, one of the last comment, I've noticed that I've signed up for community newsletter, I guess Troy School District newsletter as a community member because I am not a parent anymore. I started getting it. I just saw one this month. Did something change? Or should I have always been getting it, or did I just notice it?
You should have.
I just noticed it just last month. I wondered if there was any change. Okay,
When did you sign up for it?
I think it was end of last year when they sent out a note, if you're, anybody, community members want to sign up.
They don't
for
have
it.
it all summer.
I know, that's why I asked, did they just,
So you should have received.
But not all summer.
yeah, not all, last couple of weeks, so maybe that.
That's
Okay.
all, that's
So that's all, so that's newly added.
We had there was a change, some sort of change into the messenger, where now our contacts were re-added back in, so there could be a glitch there, and so I looked into that.
Okay, but I'm getting it now. But yes, I never used to get it. I'm getting it now, so I wondered if there was a change. No?
We had an issue with a couple of lists, so that could be why.
Okay. That's all. Good. Stephanie, thanks.
I just want to say thanks for the data presentation today. It's really refreshing and nice to see us moving in a good direction that way. And also the tiniest constituents in my house said the first days of school went fabulously. So,
Good.
you know, if the tiny people who were here to serve are saying everything, it was a good day, it was probably a good day. Yeah, good. That's it. I don't really have anything. My life has been boring, other than. No, nothing. Yeah, and the couch.
that we're gonna give to the.
Anybody want to? Come to my truck. That's right.
Well, the tiny people that I sat with at lunch at Hamilton really liked the new mozzarella sticks.
That's very important.
The big cell.
Really
Yes.
That's good. I was gonna ask.
We can take a break for the rest of the year.
No, I would reiterate, the feedback that we've received thus far have been very positive, start of the year. Very normal, start of the year stuff. So that's refreshing to see. We are, homecoming parades are coming up. You should have gotten invites if you're interested. Make sure Judy knows so that she can, if you're responding straight away yourself, that's fine too. But if you want Judy to respond on your behalf, let her know and we'll make sure that they have shirts for you as well. So to that end, Athens is the 19th. Who here plans on going?
I think
I'm going. I need to
think so.
get my.
No, September.
It's
This is for my own edification, just to see who like, all right, good, we're gonna have to
Yes.
turn out. And then Troy High is, the 10th of October.
Yes, I can go.
We're gonna have a good number of people.
I plan on being
Yes.
place.
That's great. So we'll have a really good turnout. That'll be nice.
He's got to find how much candy to get.
Smile at us and wave.
And we're really hopeful that, the Troy High concession stand is moving along very nicely. So, and the entryway itself is moving along very nicely. So we're really hopeful that for that homecoming game, we're gonna be able to show a pretty complete project. I don't 100% commit to that, but it should be significantly complete by then. We got a bump, we got a message today, unfortunately. They're no longer supporting, I think the feds are no longer supporting the National Blue Ribbon. So we anticipated being able to share a National Blue Ribbon School with you this year because they had been notified in advance, and now would have been the time that they had applied and so forth. But unfortunately, the feds have decided not to support that program any longer. So we won't have. Maybe they'll bring it back. Who knows? But I think that's all I have.
Do you know if they're still supporting the National History Day?
Yes,
Are
we
they?
just had
Oh.
this past year.
Okay, all right.
I haven't seen otherwise, so.
I feel like TBD is
I was
the
gonna say-
answer to all of these questions.
Very different kind of.
Yeah, so hopefully those things will come
TBD.
back because that's a nice recognition. Blue Ribbon in particular is nice recognition because it's, you know, you're not applying for it, you know, you're being identified as a school that's breaking, you know, barriers or whatever. Yeah. Fortunate. But that's all I have.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for a good discussion on the dashboard. I think that's helpful. Just a couple of things, you know, Rich and I talked, we really, so as we kick off the strategic planning cycle, our intent would be to start canvassing calendars to probably do that outside of a normal workshop. We talked again about, you know, some of the interest in really deep diving the budget. Right now, because we have a budget, but we don't know how real it is. I think we're gonna wait and see what comes out of Lansing. But those will be two things that we'll follow up on, and so we'll be looking at calendars probably, I'm gonna guess either, you know, Saturday morning. But to really, you know, kind of combine the strategic planning and then look at that with a, you know, we can do some continued budget education, but kind of look at how will some of the decisions that we need to wrestle with in the strategic plan, you know, what kind of impact that may have on budget as well. So we will get that teed up for shortly after the first of the year.
And I'm looking for some resources that I will send along in advance, some reading resources that I'll send along in advance, that, you know, we used several years ago, were really, I think, good in building context around the governance core. And it dovetails very nicely with the work we've done with strategic planning. And I think learning forward with that will help us have some common vocabulary around our interests in developing what that strategic plan looks like. So long story short, I'll be sending out some information for you to take a look at, and maybe after the October book read, after that's done, send that out. I think it'll be helpful building some context.
Okay. And then just really a reminder, in October, we will have the discussion of, you know, the disengaged team, and I'll collaborate with Rich and David, or, you know, how we want to orchestrate, you know, a more meaningful discussion with the board. And we've done a few things. Sometimes we've done some small groups that then, you know, come back to the larger group. Sometimes we've had a series of thought starter questions to comment on, but we'll come up with something that'll be a good way to uh, just facilitate discussion.
And I'll be remote and for the actual workshop.
All right?
But I would say if, however, whatever the ideas of how to approach it, kind of like with anxious generation, if we're reading this, then, and I understand this book is a little bit different than saying, okay, just cell phone policy. But if we are talking about it, it should be, towards some type of
What is it?
policy, like,
Well,
some
I think
type
we
of,
should say, what do we think it means to us? And, how do we, um, you know, do we see parallels in our community with what's being said? And then I haven't got to the point where they talk about the ideas for engagement, and I think those would probably be really important. So maybe something around focusing on, what are the ideas that resonate the most? What do you, how do you think it might employ?
and it might also, in 2 weeks, we'll have the data dashboard presentation to see what information on there might be useful, in that discussion as well. Like, I'm thinking, sports club, fine arts participation. I know we don't have club data that might be next year, but, how does that relate to some of the categories of students that you might, so that way if, because I did, like I even said with the extension, to just read a book and talk about it for talking about it is, not why we're here. So just,
Yeah, no, we've been doing these book reads, I don't know, for 6 years now or so, and then I can really point to the books we've read of how that has, at least resulted in us looking at something differently, approaching something differently, and doing something with it. So I'm confident that we'll figure this out. Okay, anything else for the good of the order? All right, then we will close for tonight, and we will see you all on September 16th, 7 o'clock, other buildings.